So my name is Kayleigh, I'm from the Netherlands. So Neanderthals are very interesting because they most likely created art. So that shows that Neanderthals had a ritualistic aspect to their lives. About 31,000 years ago, there was a child around the age of 10, seemed to have had a surgical amputation of a lower leg. The child survived and actually lived for nearly another decade afterwards. So we have evidence of humans being in North America 37,000 years ago. Homo erectus, one of the very first human species. 500,000 years of them emerging, they reached nearly the other side of the world. So the hobbit species, Homo floresiensis, long upper limbs and like arms, big feet. So like Tolkien was right, hobbits. Queen Hatshepsut has been erased from history, nearly completely. In combination with that volcano in Europe, this meltwater, the conveyor belt, I think that is why the Younger Dryas onset started.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
It's your first trip to the United States, which is pretty awesome. Super pumped to be able to host you for your first trip.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. The flight was okay yesterday. Everything worked
Flight was
out
perfect.
Well.
Yeah.
Good dinner last night.
Oh, the steak was perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It was good to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about the conversation. So tell us about your channel. Tell us who you are.
So my name is Kayleigh. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm 33. Still weird to say because it's only been a month. But yeah, I started my channel back in 2020, right before COVID hit. And I just wanted to make videos on things that I was already researching. I've always been interested in history, mostly like ancient structures and like human evolution, all that stuff. And the channel just morphed into the monster that it became. And I became a full-time YouTuber. And now I get opportunities like these.
Yep, that's awesome.
While I just normally film inside the comfort of my own home. Very small room. So
Yeah.
I'm not used to people like looking at me or hearing me while I'm filming. So that's going to be an experience.
It'll be different, but
Yeah.
a great experience. Yeah, cool. So how big's your channel now?
So I got 207,000 subscribers.
Nice.
I
That's
think from
blowing
the
up.
top of my head.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I always see you're active on YouTube, on X. Where else can people find you?
On Instagram, and I'm also on Blue Sky, Threads. I have a Discord.
Okay.
People don't know, but I have a Discord.
Okay.
We got like 671 people.
All right.
We had 666 for a while. That was lovely.
Okay.
But then we bumped it, and it's like, okay, now we have to grow.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you were telling me a little bit last night about your kind of like your childhood and some of your experiences. Maybe before we get into like the ancient stuff, tell me about tell the audience about like your story, because it's a pretty interesting story.
So yeah, I was born too small.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 5 weeks of my life I spent in a hospital. So something went wrong during the pregnancy. The placenta stopped growing and started to like decay inside my mom. But hey, I'm here. Mm-hmm. So that's good. My parents split when I was 4 months old. I lived with my mom until I was 9, but my mom was a bit handsy and yeah, not a great mom. So I went to live with my dad at the age of 9 with both my sisters, and then at the age of 12, they both went back to my mom. So I lived as an only child in my dad's house, even though I had 2 older sisters and a half-brother on my mom's side. So experiencing being an only child while also having siblings is a thing. I've been partially raised by my grandparents, mostly my grandmother. She passed in 21, so I got an owl tattoo, keep her with me. Always been interested in history. History and English were the only 2 subjects in school that I always aced. The rest I flunked.
Okay.
It's fine. I dropped out of high school and studied construction for a while. As I got an opportunity, had to quit my studies because of the global recession and all the construction companies going bankrupt. And no one wanted a girl as an intern, so I had to quit. Then in 2012, I had a surgery where they removed my tailbone as it was broken in multiple places. And I was in pain from the age of 12. So it was really rough. Got that out, got nerve damage, bedridden for a while. And then after a couple of years, it slowly started to get better. 2016, they actually found a stitch that pressed against the nerve ending. And they had to take that out. And that's when my actual recovery started after 4 years. Fun. And then I was in a very toxic relationship with my ex for about a decade. And in 2020, when I started my channel, he hated it. Like, he hated all the YouTube videos and the research and the time I spent in it. And in 21, I left him in October. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to live my life.
Good for you.
You're no longer a part of it. And that's when my channel actually took off. And I started traveling to the UK and to Malta and Sweden, and eventually got the opportunity to tour Egypt for like 5 weeks in 2022. Amazing. Like, that's an experience. You don't want to be in Egypt necessarily for 5 weeks in a row because it's rough. But on the other hand, I've been inside the Great Pyramid twice in like a span of 5 weeks. Not many people can say that.
Facts.
So
yeah. That's cool.
I'm very happy with all the opportunities that I got. Life hasn't always been easy, but you have to make the most of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned last night, if you're comfortable mentioning it, that you had an accident where you got hit by a branch and it was.
Yeah. So at the age of 12, I was on a horseback riding camp, and we were doing like a forest tour with like the horses, and I wore a cap because it's mandatory in the Netherlands. You have to, which is a good thing. I had to cross a stream. And there was a tree on the other side, and my horse got spooked for whatever reason. It threw me off, and I hit a cut-off branch with like my head. So I had a small crack in my skull, and then I fell face down inside the stream. So they had to resuscitate me, and it wasn't fun. I don't remember anything of this. I miss a day and a half of memory because of this accident. I now have migraines and all that stuff. It's not fun. But it was an experience, and I learned that from a very young age. Like, even though life is difficult and you can get very depressed and you can lose yourself a little bit, like, they tried to kill me off and it didn't work. So I'm here to stay. And like, I won't, like, life is a gift, and I won't look a gifted horse in the mouth. So I'm going to make the most of it.
Awesome.
You're not going to get rid of me.
Yeah, cool. Love it. And you've taken that passion to your love for ancient history.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of why you're so successful, obviously, why you're growing so well. And so really cool to really great story. And so what was it about? I love the fact that you're a high school dropout, because it's obvious that you're incredibly intelligent. And there's so many success stories of people who didn't finish high school, didn't finish college, and went on to be incredible leaders, incredible people, and do incredible things. I got nothing out of like the educational system. I mean, just being completely honest, like, I mean, some math stuff, was super helpful, and I still use it today. And obviously being able to write competently is helpful in different times of your life. But a lot of the memorization of data and facts is just a complete waste of time. So it's awesome to see somebody, just make it with a huge passion for what you do and a huge passion for life. So congrats. I'm excited to talk
Thank
to
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
My sister, she's a paleontologist, so she has studied in like university and got a master's degree. Recently finished her PhD. But she taught me a little bit about like how you use the scientific method to like research stuff, and how Google Scholar and all that stuff works. And that was like right at the beginning when I started my channel. That's how I found some very sneaky excavation papers that I used, because they weren't on like the normal Google, but I could find them on scholar.google.com. Very nice. Yeah. But yeah, like things like that, she taught me a little bit, but most of it, I just figured it out on my own.
Yeah, cool. So ancient history, so your passion for that, where does that come from?
Oh, that goes back like long ways. So I think I was about 6 or 7. My mom had these encyclopedias. She had the whole set, which is not a thing in the Netherlands. Like, not most people have the whole set. And I skimmed through the pages a lot. And then one day I saw the pyramids, and I just stared at the pictures for hours on end and like read everything that I could. Then I saw Stonehenge. Again, stared at the pictures and read as much as I could. And I think that kind of was the first moment where I was exposed to it, and I wanted to know more. And then because of life, you forget about it a little bit. And then as you get older, you start to research it, and then you're like, oh, I want to know more. And then you learn more, and then it's like, I want to know more. And then with like the human evolution stuff that I now do, it started with an archaeological discovery where in Germany, massive parts of forests were cleared by Neanderthals. And I kind of jokingly made a video about like, what if Neanderthals were farming? Of course they weren't, but I mean, they were at least like intelligent enough to know that if they dropped seeds from like the gathering part of their life, that the same plants would grow on the path that they would have dropped the seeds. So I mean, put two and two together, they probably could, but they would have probably cleared the forest to make like clearings to hunt, because it makes it easier to hunt. But then again, like rudimentary farming. Then I was like, the people in the comment sections were telling me like, but Neanderthals were dumb brutes. And I'm like, were they? Right. So I started researching like the intelligence of Neanderthals, and I was like, oh, they're actually like right next to us. Like
bigger brains than us, right?
When it comes to intelligence, they were like right where we are. So they weren't dumb brutes.
Right.
And I was like, I want to know more. And then I made videos on Neanderthal misconceptions. And then I figured out like, oh, there's all these extinct human species. And so I was like, I'm going to research all of them and just make videos on them and have that knowledge available to everyone. And that really launched my channel into what it is now.
Nice. Yeah, the clearing of the forest thing could be for protection / survival. Like if you need to, it's much easier to survive. If you're in, it's easier to get attacked if you're in the jungle and you don't have a clear line of view or clear line of sight. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be, I guess, farming, but why couldn't it be?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if they're intelligent, they can't figure out how to plant seeds. I mean, they've got massive brains.
Just drop a seed and the plant will grow.
Right.
Under the right circumstances, but still.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be super cool to dive into some of that human evolution with you and the various species that we have and what we think we were doing and the various human species were doing. When does all of that kind of begin? Like, I guess, when does the Stone Age begin?
So the Stone Age goes back beyond all human species that have lived. So it goes back to the ancestral species of the Australopithecines. So if you know about Lucy, that was found in, I think it was Ethiopia, she was an Australopithecus afarensis. And her species, the Australopithecus species, created stone tools, very rudimentary, but stone tools. They are known as the Lomekwi stone tools, and they date back 3.3 million years.
Wow.
So the Stone Age started 3.3 million years ago, at least.
At the
yes,
earliest.
At the earliest. Mm-hmm. And people often think about like the Stone Age starting somewhere like maybe 100,000 years ago. It goes back way further.
And when did we discover that? When did we discover Lucy and those tools?
I think Lucy was discovered in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah. Okay.
And the stone tools, they were more recent, I think. Okay. Or like they were maybe discovered back then, but like all the in situ data they found later.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So that's the Lomekwi 3 excavation site in Kenya, yeah. It's beautiful. Like these stone tools they're like I said, they're very rudimentary. They're not as sophisticated as like the later Acheulean tools. But if you grab them and you place them in your hand, you can actually feel where the palm of the thumb would have pressed into the stone to like actually be able to use it. And that's why we know that they were created. And they weren't just like stones lying around.
So what did Lucy look like 3.3 million years ago? Maybe Ryan can pull it up.
So Lucy was a lot smaller than us and more ape-like still. So very archaic. I think longer limbs, like when it comes to like the arms, were probably more in length. The feet were not like our feet yet, because that started more with like Homo erectus. But like comparing like, yeah, you can see Lucy a little bit here. Like I said, like much longer arms, because she was still more like ape-like. So Lucy is more, when you look at like chimpanzees and humans and you see the difference, so Lucy would have been like in the middle of that more. So it's not like a chimpanzee, but it's also not like a human. Because she would have been the Australopithecus species were after the split between humans and chimpanzees. And Ororentugenensis is a species that would have been more closer to that split. So that predates Lucy. Ororentugenensis, I think, is about 6 million years old, a little over 6 million years old.
What were they doing with the tools?
So they probably would have used that to break open seeds or things like nuts and things like that. And I'm not sure if it was like used for like hunting, because I'm not sure if like Australopithecus species would have actually like hunted like Homo erectus later on did. But yeah, probably for like being able to access food and things like that.
Okay, gotcha.
And some monkeys in modern times enter the Stone Age. There are some monkeys that figure out that if they use stone on like nuts and things, they can get to like things inside.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. So that's kind of when the ancestors of humans began to use stone tools for like survival, essentially. And then, so what do we see after that in terms of the lineage of the various human species? Like, how many different types of humans do we know about today?
Well, we have Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo antecessor. I'm just going for like the bigger ones. There are some like species that are thought to maybe be different from, but often get paired in with the bigger species. So habilis, erectus, antecessor, heidelbergensis, neanderthalensis, Denisovan, naledi, floresiensis, luzonensis, and then you have like Homo longi, but that could have been a Denisovan, but it's unsure. Chris Stringer feels like it might have been a Denisovan. So here you can like see at least some of the ones that, like Rudolfensis is often paired with either habilis or erectus. So Rudolfensis I often don't talk about separately, but I'm going to make a video on it in the future to like look at why it's often paired with one of the other species. And you can like see Ororantuganensis down there, and Sahelanthropus chadensis. Those are the first bipedal hominids in Africa. And Tuganensis might have traveled as far north as Crete, because they found footprints on the island of Crete near Tragillos, and they most likely belong to Ororantuganensis. According to Professor Per Alberg from the Uppsala University. Like,
okay.
Don't fight me.
Yeah.
I interviewed him for like 40 minutes on those footprints.
Okay.
So it was amazing man, like to listen to, like very charming and knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, cool.
And you have like Afarensis, that's a Lucy, Africanus, Sediba, Garhi, and Anamensis. So those are the Australopithecines.
Okay. And so the theory, the currently accepted theory, or the today, the most likely scenario for is what? And in terms of like, where is it, the out of Africa thing still? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I often look at the European Miocene apes.
Yeah.
And those predate the African lineage. Yeah. And it is a possibility. It's plausible, but out of this point in time, it's unsure. But it might be possible that some of them migrated south back into Africa and eventually led to the Australopithecines. So it's a possibility, but there's not enough evidence to be conclusive about it. But I do want to remain open-minded to that possibility, because there has been research done on multiple species that lived during the European Miocene. So in the Miocene, we have numerous species in Europe. The most notable are Danuvius guggenmosi, Dryopithecus, Gryzopithecus freybergi, and then Oreopithecus and Uranopithecus. Those are the bigger species that might have possibly migrated back south into Africa. And some of them might have been bipedal, which would make them the first bipedal hominids that we currently know of. Like I said, Ororantuganensis and Sahelanthropus chadensis. Like Sahelanthropus chadensis is currently known as the oldest known bipedal hominid in Africa.
And how far back does that?
7 million years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
While the European Miocene apes were like 12 to 9 or 8 million years ago. So they would predate.
Gotcha.
And the climate in Europe became uninhabitable, became too cold. So that's why it is believed that they may have migrated south to where it was a more suitable climate for them. We know from like giraffes, they started in Europe, but then the climate became uninhabitable and they went down south. And so they went into Africa, and that's why we nowadays have giraffes in Africa. So it is possible that some of these European Miocene great apes did the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, so let's pick one and dive a little bit deeper into it. So maybe like the Neanderthal species. That's a really good one. What was kind of their path? What do we know about them? And walk us through there.
A lot of people think that the Neanderthals would have just started in like Europe. It's most likely that they started in like Eurasia, more down south. They probably migrated more northwards because of the climate being suitable for them. They would have lived in more colder climates compared to like other species. So Neanderthals are very interesting because they created art. Most likely created art. Let's keep it at that. So we have some cave paintings in like Spain that don't make sense when looking at the dates. So some of them might be like 54,000 years old or 50,000 years old. Humans, like Homo sapiens, weren't yet there to make that art. So it would have probably been created by Neanderthals. And Neanderthals lived in like small groups. They had like problems when it comes to like their group sizes. So they probably had some difficulty with fertility and that kind of stuff. What else? Neanderthals, man, like, oh, this is the thing. Like, I'm currently working on a documentary about Neanderthals, and every time I talk about Neanderthals, it's like blank in my head. So they emerged around 400,000 years ago, and they seem to have gone extinct somewhere between 37,000 years ago and 32,000 years ago. And I don't necessarily think they went fully extinct. Like, they didn't drop off the face of the earth. I think they were assimilated into our lineage because modern humans still carry up to, I think, 3% Neanderthal DNA within their genomes. So we probably like interbred a lot. And then because of the fact that Homo sapiens are able to reproduce quite quickly and probably a lot easier than the Neanderthals were able to, we probably assimilated them completely in our lineage. So full-bred Neanderthals may have already went extinct around 37,000 years ago, but then around 32,000 years ago, it completely assimilated at that point. Yeah.
So where are we getting the information that we're drawing the conclusions about? I mean, that the stuff that we know about Neanderthals, like, or that we think we know, we found some bones. I know you mentioned the cave paintings. That's freaking awesome. I mean, if they were doing cave paintings, they could be farming. I mean, it's
who knows?
Yeah. So, but what are the things that we've discovered? What are the bones that we've discovered, and what conditions and that lead us to the conclusions that we think that we know about the Neanderthal species?
So Neanderthals are, I think, one of the species that we know most about because of the fact that we found so many bones.
Okay.
Like, I think we found nearly full skeletons.
Okay.
We also found possible Neanderthal burials in France. Some researchers don't like to say that, or like some academics don't like the idea that these were probably burials because, doing burials means that you have an understanding about life and death, and it's a little bit of a ritualistic aspect into it as well. So for a long time, it wasn't believed that Neanderthals would be able to do that. But there were probably Neanderthal burials because they seem to be intentionally buried in like places in France. So if you have a burial, you have quite full skeletons. So, La Chapelle aux Saints. This is one of the possible intentional burials of Neanderthals.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's incredible. Like I said, some researchers don't want to go there at the idea that they might have possibly intentionally buried, but I think they did.
So these guys were smart.
They were smart.
Yeah.
They probably taught us Homo sapiens a lot. So Neanderthals were probably the first to create mammoth bone shelters in like Ukraine, Siberia, that the colder climate where the mammoths would have roamed, they the bone shelters are incredible. So they would use the tusks and I think ribs and other massive bones, and then they would put like the hides over it, and you have like a perfect shelter.
Wow.
And it's perfectly suitable for that cold climate. And then, yeah, like here you have one. This one is more recent. This one is like created by Homo sapiens. I think this one was found in Ukraine.
Wow. That's incredible. So, I mean, they're building houses.
Oh, yeah.
Structures.
Yeah.
Places to sleep, places to live.
Yeah. But this is incredible. Yeah. So we have some more modern ones. So like on the next to my thumbnail on the left, this one. This is more of a modern one.
So you're saying the Neanderthals built the pyramids?
No.
No.
No. God, I love that idea. But no, unfortunately, no.
Okay. All right,
Neanderthals would have been extinct, unfortunately, by that time.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, that lost ancient advanced civilization may have been Neanderthals.
Yeah, right. Yep. It's the thought did cross my mind.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Now, the Neanderthal bone shelters that were probably by the hands of Neanderthals are more like just lots of mammoth bones scattered around at this point because it's so old. But there is a chance that Neanderthals taught Homo sapiens how to do this. Just like they would probably had some type of clothing. They were living in quite cold climates. So Neanderthals were living in like Germany, which is very up north compared to like where Homo sapiens started. We started in Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. That's where the oldest Homo sapiens bones were found. They are 300,000 years old. So that's our origins as we currently know. But that's far south. That's warm. And Homo sapiens eventually went back north. Up north, like what else is here? I mean...
It seems like any human species would be able to figure out how to create a structure, like how to build something from bones and hides and whatever, and potentially other things. But like I had Graham Hancock on the show a couple of like last month, I guess, or a month and a half ago, and we were talking about he was showing evidence for bones in North America where the marrow had been extracted from the bones, and it looked as if like what could have, there was like fractures on the bones, and then it looked like they hunted and then they extracted the marrow from the bones. I want to say, I forget how many years ago, but it was like tens of thousands of years ago.
So we have the Ceruti mastodon site, which is unclear if it was by the hands of humans. So I think he was pointing to like that site because there's a possibility, but as of this point in time, the evidence is not yet strong enough to make the full claim that it was made by the hands of humans, like the humans done that. The Ceruti mastodon site is in itself very intriguing. I've made a video on it a while ago. I didn't go into like full depth on it, but I mean, I'm not an academic, I'm not a scholar, I'm not able to like get the nitty-gritty facts of like the papers always. I think it's intriguing, that side, but 37,000 years ago, we have full evidence of humans butchering mammoths and mastodons in North America. So at least goes back 37,000 years ago.
In North America?
North America.
Okay.
So I got this in my cheat sheet, so I'm going to quickly scroll and see if I can grab it real quick, because I did some like oldest evidence in North America. So oldest evidence of humans, North America, 37,000 years ago, at the Rio Puerco Canyon in New Mexico. Clear marks of butchery and bone knives, as well as evidence of controlled fire, were discovered there. So we have evidence of humans being in North America 37,000 years ago. And that is uncontested. So like that's pristine evidence.
And when did this evidence, when did this become generally accepted?
I think in the last decade or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very modern.
Very modern.
Very modern.
Yeah.
So in the 80s, they already knew about the Clovis first not being the case anymore. So in academia, it was already starting to be accepted that Clovis first wasn't the thing.
In the 80s?
In the 80s.
Oh.
That's when it started, at least. And the media is a bit slower. when it comes to this kind of stuff. Because the media will still portray Neanderthals as being dumb brutes, even though for decades now we know that they've been very intelligent. So the media is behind on things. And that makes it seem as if academia is behind on things because the media won't report on it. And I think that's a massive problem that we have at this point in time when it comes to like ancient history. It's the media being outdated, even though they were supposed to be the ones reporting on it, you know? So that's why I like to look at some of the academic papers and like dive deep and see what they found.
Right.
And talk with academics in this field. So I know from people like Chris Stringer and Alice Roberts, people that research human evolution, all this stuff that I talk about comes mostly because of their information that they shared with the world, even though the media is a bit slow.
Okay. So academia still thinks that humans came to North and South America through the land bridge around from Alaska?
I think the proposed idea at this point in time still, but it doesn't necessarily make sense because the land bridge wouldn't have been there around 37,000 years ago, if I'm correct.
Right.
I might be wrong. Don't attack me. Yeah. But I mean, do attack me, but it's fine. I can handle being attacked. It's fine.
You handle it really well, actually. Yeah. On X, you just fire right back.
Oh,
it's great.
I don't take shit.
No,
Sorry.
You don't at all. It's
so
fantastic.
So we have a lot of evidence for humans in North America, and I grabbed some dates and I put that in a cheat sheet. So we have the fossilized footprints at White Sands in New Mexico. They date back at least 23,000 years. But there's a possibility that some of these tracks may date back to 30,000 years ago. So they're still investigating this, researching this, and like using the optical luminescence dating and all that stuff, like the new science that they discovered and created to research these things. We also have the Galt site in Texas. It's an archaeological site that dates back to about 20,000 years ago. Incredible site. They're currently in the works. I think the film is at this point nearly done. But there's a film coming out on the Galt site in Texas. And that archaeologist that had bought the site and made it his life's work to uncover everything there is to know about this. And they're still excavating. And I've been contacted about a year or two ago at this point by one of the people working at the Galt site. And he asked me, like, do you want to maybe make a video on this? Like, not sure if you've ever heard of it. And I'm like, I've never heard of this. It's intriguing. I dived in, made a video on it. It's incredible. I think that shows such clear evidence of human occupation in America, in like North America. It's amazing. And I'm very excited for the film and I want to promote it. Give me the film already. Like I emailed them, like, please give me the film. I need this. So we also have the oldest evidence of humans in Oregon, or Oregon. Sorry. I got attacked in my comments a lot for this, saying Oregon. Like, I'm Dutch. I don't pronounce everything perfectly always.
Don't worry about it.
But like, oldest evidence of humans in Oregon dates back to like 18,000 years ago. They found evidence of human occupation at the Rimrock Draw shelter, like rock shelter. It's very, very incredible. I made a video on this. And it blows my mind.
How far back was that?
18,000 years.
18. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we also have the oldest human footprints fossilized in Utah, date back to 12,000 years. So that's more like the Clovis time period that we're currently going into. But for me, it just shows that humans have been in North America at least 37,000 years at this point. That's what we currently know. I just need people to like figure out more. Find footprints, find stuff. Like, come on, I want more.
Yeah, what were they doing?
Yeah, what were they doing here?
Right, because it's so. And all of academia is in agreement on this 37,000 year thing at this point. You don't have there's no holdouts and people.
I don't think that the 37,000 years was contested.
Okay.
No. As far as I'm aware.
And so how did they get here?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Like, that's the mystery.
Right.
And I like mysteries.
Yeah. Ryan, pull up Google Earth. I just want to show you how I think a possible way that they got here. And you tell me if this is crazy or not, but something that I've been exploring a little bit with some guests is how people got to the Americas in the first place. And so it seems like with this, it was Clovis first for a while, and that was people came from this direction and came all the way across here.
The Bering
and came down.
Strait, I think.
Right, Bering Strait, yep. Through that area. And I'm exploring the possibility of, did people come this from here? And so if you go back into the Ice Age, a lot of this land is above water. So sea levels at least 400 feet lower. So potentially people living here. You've got the Aboriginal people here in Papua New Guinea, Aborigine. And you've got a lot of DNA from those people in South America still today. And so I'm just looking at like Easter Island and this, what looks like it could be a string of what would have been potentially above water. Potentially this could have been islands. This leads right to Peru, basically, where you see all of those ancient megalithic structures, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu, all the ancient big blocks. And when you go all the way and you follow this what could potentially have been a chain of islands, you get to, where is it? Easter Island is here, which has a lot of the same walls. That it has some of the same walls that we find in Peru, and so the same kind of like building structure, the same interlocking sort of blocks, which Ryan will add in post-production. But they look exactly like what you find in Peru, but supposedly, according to academia today, there's no connection between Peru and Easter Island that dates way back. And you follow these islands back, and you can and it leads you directly to where the DNA evidence exists in South America. And so I just wonder, could people have traveled from east to west across the Pacific Ocean, had a settlement in the tallest landmass where they created Moai statues, and used the islands as sort of places to repair their boats and get supplies and get food and drop off and sleep. And, maybe they were living there, maybe they weren't, but it just seems like that's such an easy explanation during the Ice Age for people to have come from that part of the world and come into South America first, as opposed to coming into North America first. And I just was curious your thoughts on that.
I think it's very intriguing, because if the water level goes down far enough during the Ice Age, I think it is a possibility. It would be crazy to say that it's impossible.
Yeah.
And I like the plausible explanation that it could give us. So I think that if there is a way for us to do research along those possible islands back in the day, like along the ocean floor, I think that if they find at least like one or two bits and pieces of like possible evidence, then it becomes a stronger idea and theory, and then it would probably get more attention to be researched.
Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible at this point. When I look at it, yeah, if the water recedes enough for like some of that to be above water, then it is a possibility. Because we know about like Homo erectus reaching Indonesia 1.6 million years ago or so. I mean, how did they get to Indonesia? Like, did they make boats? Well, probably the water level was a lot lower, so they would have been able to like walk there. Same with like the Wallace Line and all that stuff. So I think it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. What are some of the coolest, craziest things that are like the most unexplained things that ancient humans have done?
Ooh. So we have in the Bruniquel cave in France, we have stone circles made from stalagmites, possibly by Neanderthals. Because looking at the dates, must have been Neanderthals because Homo sapiens weren't there yet.
Okay.
That's a ritualistic aspect. Yeah, you can see a picture right here. I made a video on this on my channel as well because it's so incredible. So that shows that Neanderthals had a ritualistic aspect to their lives and the way they lived.
So stalagmites are on the ground, and they're natural formations. So
they're natural formations, but the stalagmites and stalactites they would have used to create these stone circles. And it's not just one stone circle, there's multiple, and there's evidence of fire having been burned like near these. So definitely ritualistic aspect. Incredible.
That's incredible.
And most likely made by Neanderthals, because there hasn't been an explanation for humans having done this.
Uh-huh. And any thought as to what they were doing in there?
Well, it's I think the ritualistic aspect says a lot. So we often forget that in our everyday lives, we all have rituals that we do. The way you wake up, the way you do things, the way you make your breakfast, the time that you eat your breakfast, it's all part of your ritual in life. People often say that, archaeologists often say that it's a ritual building, like it's a temple. A ritual building back in the day could have been a community space. Simple as that. It's a ritual to go there and spend time with each other. It's part of a ritual. So it doesn't need to be like the woo-woo religion stuff. A ritual space in itself grants you a community, some wisdom that could be shared, food that could be shared. It's all part of rituals. So I think in a ritualistic sense, those circles were made by Neanderthals, and they would have probably created them to have a sense of community, do things together. They probably during that time had a bit of a surplus of food, so they had the time to do this. They were probably thriving, because if you don't thrive, you don't have the time to do anything like this. And I think it would have been a way for them to share knowledge.
Is there any evidence of like more advanced tools than just rocks that they were using, or like any evidence of like bow and arrow or like nothing like that?
No.
Okay.
No. We do have the Schöninger spears.
Spears.
They were made from wood, and they were found at Schöninger in Germany. They are the oldest known spears, probably created by Homo heidelbergensis or Neanderthals, and they date back to 300,000 years ago. So they would have had at least like wooden tools as well. It's not just Neanderthals would have definitely created wooden tools, bone needles, things like that.
The reason I asked, I saw a documentary about that showed some bones from a Neanderthal that looked like it was hit with a projectile. And so I guess a spear, must have been a spear probably. But, that was pretty interesting that they were potentially warring with each other, or potentially warring with a different species of human or whatever it might be. So what do we know in terms of like them fighting with each other and
well, it's difficult for like that kind of information because of the fact that it's so long ago,
right?
And you only get like bits and pieces. But we do know that so Homo antecessor was most likely the first human species in Europe. So they were the pioneer species. They left the footprints at Hasbro in England. They are probably ancestral to Homo heidelbergensis, or heidelbergensis for the German watchers. I just have to, I'm sorry. And then Homo heidelbergensis is most likely the last common ancestor between us Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and possibly Denisovans. If the heidelbergensis was assimilated into Neanderthals or us Homo sapiens, we don't know. They might have gone extinct. They may have had some, fights and war or whatever. It's very possible. But I don't necessarily see evidence for Neanderthals and humans having been at war or things like that. We see interbreeding, and we see that quite a lot. And that's why we currently have such a high percentage still of Neanderthal DNA, even though they've been extinct for at least 32,000 years. And we still carry up to like 3% of Neanderthal within our genomes. So that shows that we couldn't have been at war necessarily. It's more like we assimilated them, we interbred a lot. We probably had a lot more in common than people currently think. But it's possible that Heidelbergensis and Neanderthals may have clashed.
Any evidence for like medicine or taking care of each other or surgery or like any of that kind of stuff?
So recently they discovered that there was a Neanderthal child that most likely had Down syndrome, and I think it got to like the age of 5 or 6. So that means that the Neanderthal community that it lived in took care of it. And that shows a level of care and I think love beyond just survival.
How do we know it had Down syndrome and how were they taking
it's
care of it?
a thing in the ear that they also use in modern times that they can see. Like, yeah. It's a part of the inner ear that shows Down syndrome, I think. I'm not an expert on this, but I think, it's part of the inner ear that they discovered that they found that child most likely had Down syndrome. And it got, I think, to like the age of 5 or 6. That child couldn't have done anything for the community. So, I mean, they took care of it. Yeah, at least to 6 years of age, yeah.
I feel like most 6-year-olds need to be taken care of. I mean, different back then, I feel like, because like you could, if you were just wandering out, you could find water, there would be drinking sources. They would settle by drinking sources. There would be food to eat. And so kids today can't drive to McDonald's, they can't drive to go get to the grocery store. They can't go get food. So they're pretty much more helpless today, I feel like, than they would have been back then.
I mean, even compared to like, when you look at like our human lineage, and if you go back far enough, that the fact that we share lineage with chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans, if you look at their babies, like within minutes, they just grab mom, done.
Right.
Just grab mom. And if mom walks for like 10 hours, they grab and they do not let go. Human babies are completely useless.
Yeah.
Absolutely, completely useless up until like the age of what, 8?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, about that.
Like a kid can't really take care of itself.
Right.
Like I probably should know since I wasn't really been taken care of as a very young child. So my oldest sister would help me out with like making my own bread at the age of like when I was 6. Looking back, like I did a shit job.
Yeah.
I'm glad I survived this long, but I mean, if it was just up to me, I wouldn't have survived.
Right.
So human babies, just completely useless.
Yeah.
They can't talk, they can't understand, they just cry. Not that I hate babies, they're cute. But I mean...
You're just not going to have any.
Nah. And that's fine.
It's fine. Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah.
Not everyone needs to procreate.
Right.
You don't want more people like me.
Absolutely. Ryan is in your camp. He's
Yeah.
He's going to skip that whole process.
Yeah.
What else before we move on from ancient humans, anything else that we didn't cover that you think is...
So the hobbit species, this is just something I can't help myself. So in Indonesia, at the island of Flores, we had a hobbit species living there from, I think, 150,000 to 90,000 years ago. Most likely a direct descendant from Homo erectus that went there. Homo floresiensis is just insane. Very archaic morphology, as you can see, like long upper limbs and like the arms, all that stuff. Probably good for climbing the trees still. Bipedal, definitely. Definitely like a Homo species, like a human species. Very small. I think like 1.1 meter tall in general. And I'm not sure if that's like a little over 3 feet, if I'm correct, when I'm like converting my meters to my not metric, whatever. 3 feet 6 inches, I think I just saw. So it's very tiny.
So it's an alien.
And big feet. So like Tolkien was right. Hobbits.
Yeah.
Little hobbitses. But yeah, no, they are incredible. And they're currently still excavating the cave where the fossils were found. Okay. So more and more information is coming to light very slowly.
How many were found?
Sure. You say how many? So let's grab the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was Oh no, that's
15. It says 15 partial skeletons.
Yeah.
15 of them.
at
Wow.
least one or two, I think, like at least one full skeleton, I think, and then
A lot of body parts.
a lot of body.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, mostly they find teeth from like ancient human species because the teeth decay the slowest.
Right.
And Indonesia is not the perfect climate for like fossilization and preservation. So if you want a fossil to be preserved well, it needs to be either a very cold / dry climate, or it needs to be covered in mud.
Okay.
But like warm climates, humidity, all that stuff, super bad.
Okay.
And you can't extract DNA anymore because the DNA decays so fast.
Okay.
So that's why at the Denisova cave in Siberia, they found in one cave evidence of Neanderthals, Homo sapiens, and Denisovans. At first, they thought those Denisovan bones and teeth that they found were just, you know, a little bit of a weird Neanderthal. Then they did DNA research, and they were able to extract DNA, and they found a new human species known now as Denisovans. But they've only been discovered through their DNA. And the only reason that we know that is because the DNA was preserved because it was such a cold climate. It was preserved perfectly for this. They've also found molars of Denisovans, most likely Denisovans, at the Tibetan Plateau and in Laos, in the Annamite mountain range. They couldn't extract DNA from that, but they were able to look at like the ancient proteins in like the teeth, and through that analysis, they found that it's most likely Denisovan. Not fully 100% conclusive like at the Denisova cave, but similar enough to that it has to either be a hybrid or part Denisovan. Has to be in it. Yeah.
Okay. What were they like? What were they doing as a species?
It's difficult because we know so little about them. Recently made a video on them, and where I looked at what we currently know, we really don't know that much. We do know that they are more similar to Neanderthals than we are similar to Neanderthals. So they would have most likely split later from the last common ancestor than us. So if you look at like the possibility of Homo heidelbergensis being the last common ancestor, it makes it a bit weird because then the dates probably are a bit off. So if you have heidelbergensis that split into us and then Neanderthal Denisovan, their split ends up happening later than us. That's weird. So it's probably that Homo antecessor is our last common ancestor with Neanderthals and Denisovans. We split from Homo antecessor through possibly interbreeding with heidelbergensis as well. And then you have like Neanderthals and Denisovans. Their last common ancestor is most likely heidelbergensis because they share most of the morphology and like they share most with heidelbergensis more than us. And that split would have probably happened around 400,000 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier, but at the last 400,000 years ago, because that's when the first Neanderthals emerged. So it has to have happened around there. And Denisovans seem to have emerged around that same time as well. So that's probably when their split happened. They were able to interbreed. There is a full hybrid found known as Deni, 50-50 Neanderthal Denisovan. So it was a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father, if I'm correct. And she lived around 90,000 years ago. And her remains were, like some partial remains of her were found at the Denisova cave in Siberia. Yeah.
So when we're talking about splitting from ancestors and I mean, so we have all these different species so in order for these species to evolve and to form and to become what they eventually become, that happens because they're evolving in different locations because they've separated from whatever the core species was. They moved to a different location. They're interbreeding with their species within that location. The climate's different, the food's different, their environment's different, and so they're evolving differently. And so So in part of the world, we're getting hobbits. In part of the world, we're getting Denisovans. In part of the world, we're getting Neanderthal. And so that's essentially, so if that's known and that's fact, why is evolution a question for people? I don't think really understood that.
I think it partly has to do with religion, that evolution is so contested.
Got it.
Because some people that really, really, really believe in the Bible think that the world is only 6,000 years old.
Okay.
I get them a lot in my comment section, like a lot.
Okay.
I really did not think that that was such a thing, but apparently it is. So because of their belief that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, of course you can't have dinosaurs. Of course you can't have human evolution. Like, of course, God created everything. It's only 6,000 years old. Doesn't make any sense to me when looking at all of this, but I understand their way of thinking. I also think it's important to put yourself into the mind of someone like that. At least be able to understand why they believe. Their faith is so strong. Their belief in their God is so strong. It has to be like this. And you know what? I'm not going to have an argument with you. I'm not going to go into this discussion. If you want to believe that, believe it. I'm not here to change everyone's mind. I'm here to research and talk about ancient history. And I just do whatever I feel like my passion takes me.
Yeah.
You know, go with the flow a little bit like that.
Right.
On the other hand, I've seen a lot of evidence for evolution during my research. And having a sister who's a paleontologist that, you know, researchers dinosaurs and the first vertebrates and all that stuff, you know, you kind of have to believe in evolution at that point.
Yeah, I think if time is real, then evolution is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, beliefs, regardless of the nature of beliefs, are ultimately, for me, from my perspective, are limitations. And so when we take things to 100% true, we're really limiting ourselves from understanding possibilities and understanding the potential nature of reality. The pyramids are tombs. For me, that's a belief. We're taking that to 100%, and so we're limiting the possibility for anything else to be true. Maybe it's maybe it's a high percentage being true for some people. Maybe it's lower for other people. Clovis first is there were no humans in North America prior to 12,000 years ago. That was a belief, but people didn't realize it was a belief. People thought it was the truth, and so it's just super important that we can kind of distinguish between what's a belief and what's a truth if we actually want to live in a reality that's real.
So when you look at like human evolution, all that we know about human evolution comes from the fossil record. And the fossil record in itself is super incomplete. Like I said, from like species of Denisovan, we only have some molars and jaw fragments. It's not going to tell you much, but that's the evidence that we currently have. So that's at least something that we can go off from. Like here, this is the evidence, this is what we know. And of course, there's still mystery surrounding it. And I think that's the beauty of ancient history. I don't ever take things to 100% unless it's been fully researched and there is no other explanation. So Denisovans, we know that they've existed through DNA research. So we know for 100% that this extinct human species existed. That's something that you can take to 100% because it's been fully researched. It's been extensively tried to disprove because that's the scientific method. The scientific method is not proving that something is A, X, Y, or Z. It's trying to disprove it in any way you can. And the moment you find out that you're unable to disprove it through all of your research, all of your extensive investigations, and you cannot disprove it, that means that it is a fact. And that's why I love the scientific method. That's why I use it in my research. I like to fantasize and I like to hypothesize. I have my own personal hypothesis even, and I didn't share this with you up front because I'm blonde and it's fine. So I have a personal hypothesis that some of the ancient structures in Europe could have been recreated in ancient times, that they may have been predated by other structures probably wood. But that's my current belief. So when you look at like Stonehenge, we currently have the stones, and it's, I think, a little over 3,000 years, like a little over 3,000 BCE when they first started. But at the car park, you had like post holes dating back to 7,000 years ago. Post holes that were used with wood, that had wood in it that eventually decayed. To me, it shows that they probably had like wooden structures, but wood keeps decaying. You have to keep rebuilding, and eventually you're just like, you know what? F it. I'm just going to use stone.
Yeah. I feel like the Stonehenge site itself was kind of dated to that 3000 BC time period at around the same time where people thought that everything is 3000 BC. Like like all the big structures around the world are 3000 BC, 2500 BC. Like there was nothing before that. Humans weren't capable of anything before that, so they have to be that age. I feel like Stonehenge could be older than that. Like, I like the actual dating.
With like Stonehenge, I don't necessarily see it, but you have stone henges, henge monuments made of stone in like Scotland. So you got the stones of Dryas, the Ring of Brodgar, Kayleigh. These predate Stonehenge by quite a bit. Some of them are like, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 years old. You also have like Newgrange in Ireland.
I think Stonehenge is like 7,000.
At least the Mesolithic post holes are like 7,000. So like I said, it could have been that they used to make like a henge monument made of wood that they also found evidence of in like Germany and other countries. There's a lot of wooden henge monuments. So I think that they probably had like wooden henge monuments there, and eventually they created Stonehenge from stone.
Okay, yeah, people still think that Stonehenge is 5,000 years. That's the generally accepted thing. Okay.
So Newgrange is like, if I'm correct, 3,400 BCE, so that would make it 5,400 years old. But it's been reconstructed in the 60s. And they may not have cleared all the soil, but like lots of the soil has been cleared. So I hypothesized, and archaeologists, I've talked with them, and they say like probably not because, but I've hypothesized like, let's say in about 2,000 years, there's a cataclysmic event, all our evidence, all our data and knowledge gets wiped out, and then humanity like has to start over again. And this is just a fun hypothesis. I like sci-fi, so it has to do with that. So eventually humanity gets back to like being able to date things, and then they will stumble upon Newgrange in Ireland. And what if they were to date it? Would they come up with a date from the 1960s, or would they come up with the same date that we found, 3,400 BCE? That was my question. So who's to say that all megalithic structures are necessarily from the date that we currently know? It might have been that when everything was cleared and they rebuilt it at a later date, that is the date that we currently know of. So some of them might predate the current known timeline. My personal hypothesis. So what we do know is that on the Anatolian plateau, where we have Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Sayburç, Çakmak Tepe, you name all of them, and there's a lot of tepes. Tastepeller. So you have that on the Anatolian plateau. These people were living in a surplus when it comes to food. They were already thriving, probably, because otherwise you don't have the time to like build incredible structures. I don't think it was a civilization. I think it was a society. There's a difference. I'll explain that a little bit probably later. But after they stopped creating these things, they started to slowly morph into like agriculture. And that took up a lot of their time. So we have the Anatolian farmers that date back to about 9,000 years ago, 9,000 years ago, I think, or like 9,000 BCE, one of the two. We have evidence of, in the DNA of the people remains found in like tombs in Ireland, like Newgrange and all that stuff. They carried the same DNA as the Anatolian farmers in Turkey. So the Anatolian farmers in Turkey were probably ancestral to the creators of the megalithic structures in Ireland. It might have been actually that they had the Anatolian farmers had some of the knowledge still preserved from the creation of the tepe sites, and that they would go into Eurasia. We have ancient structures in like Serbia and that kind of like there. We have some really ancient megalithic structures as well. Very rudimentary compared to like Göbekli Tepe. But of course, when you focus on agriculture for a while, let's say a couple hundred years, you kind of a little bit forget how you created the Göbekli Tepe and the Taştepeler sites because you've been focusing on like growing food for such a long time. Because just like even now, people, they make phones. They forgot how to run a car or like build a car from scratch. You have a phone. We can build this. I don't know how they built refrigerators or phones or whatever. Like that's not my forte. So of course they would have that in ancient times as well. So it seems that the Anatolian farmers migrated into Eurasia, Europe, as far as Ireland, at probably around the time that Doggerland was still a thing, before Doggerland completely became submerged. And their descendants probably created the megalithic structures there. And that's why we have like the king's ships in like that were laid to rest in these beautiful tombs. That's why they carry Anatolian DNA.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense that the knowledge would have come from somewhere. So it makes sense that it came from the Anatolian plateau. Not sure if Malta is like into this because I don't know how they got there and did that, and the Neolithic builders just completely vanished. Also don't know why. Massive mystery, and I love that. But yeah, it just shows at least some of the possibilities.
So what's the difference between a society and a civilization?
Okay, so it starts with culture. And culture dates back to like community culture, Neanderthals, and other Homo species, human species. They lived in groups, social groups. They would have done things for the greater good. Like I said, there was a child with Down syndrome, but it survived up until at least the age of 6. So that means that they lived as a community for and helped each other. Shows a sense of community and culture. Then you have like society, and I think that's bigger groups. A surplus was needed for the creation of like the structures. But a society does also things for the greater good, but it's a lot bigger. So you have to like manage it at least a little bit. But there's no structure in the sense of a civilization yet. So there's no kingship, no nobility, there's no laws, administration, writing. That's all part of civilization. When you look at like the definition of what a civilization is, according to the academics. So that's why I don't believe that Göbekli Tepe and the other Taştepeler sites were created by a civilization, because it doesn't fall within what is currently accepted as being a civilization, as what is needed to be a civilization.
So how do you know that stuff didn't exist?
So we have not found evidence for writing. And writing is needed for like the laws, the administration, all that stuff. So the social hierarchy that we see in civilization may have started at the society level, but it eventually became what we currently know happened in like Mesopotamia with like the civilizations.
But so like papyrus will last for like what, just a couple hundred years or so. So, I mean, what's to say that they weren't writing stuff down?
Well, papyrus is like the creation of papyrus and like the papyrus scrolls. And the reason we know that came a little bit later is because it's such a sophisticated method compared to like if you etch it on stone or make like clay tablets like they did in like Mesopotamia. That is a lot easier to do than first creating papyrus to write on. That comes a little bit later, I think. It's a bit more sophisticated compared to like.
But how do we know they weren't that sophisticated? How do we know they weren't writing stuff down? I guess
it's possible.
In any means. I mean, in some method of writing stuff down. Like, if they were doing it, I don't think we'd know about it. So
if you look at like during the Ice Age, we have like dots in cave paintings. So you have like a bison and you have like certain dots next to it. And I made a video on it that it would have probably been a very rudimentary first form of writing, as in tracking the seasons. So a dot is like start of the season or whatever, knowing when you can do it. I don't necessarily know and understand how you come to that conclusion, but a researcher did. He was not an academic, by the way. He was an amateur. He had the idea, and then he had academics look at it, and they were like, oh, that's actually a very reasonable explanation. It's very plausible. So yeah, here. You can see the 4 dots on the back of it. Yeah, there. So probably did that to like track cycles of like seasons and stuff. So there were probably 4 good seasons of hunting for this bison species.
Yeah.
So it's a first idea of writing. So but of course, yeah, when you look at like Göbekli Tepe and you look at some of the iconography that you can find there, it's possible that some of them may have been intentionally created in a way that for them was a form of writing, of knowing. If you see that squibble or if you see that swirl or whatever, it means this or that. We don't necessarily, of course, know that. That's difficult. But like writing as in like actual words and alphabets, that happened in Mesopotamia.
We think.
As far as we currently know, yeah. Unless there's more information or like more evidence from other regions, I'm waiting for it. Like, give it to me. Just give me a flux capacitor and let me time travel so I can figure all this out.
That would be cool. Yeah. It's just that, I mean, it's so hard to find even the bones of our ancestors that, I mean, the stuff that's like the hardest stuff that could have survived from our ancestors. It's so difficult to even find that from 50,000 years ago.
They can find textiles and stuff. And threads and even a type of glue that Neanderthals created at least 40,000 years ago. So we can still find like a lot. It's just that, like the fossil record, we have to go off from what we have discovered, and then there's all this possibility. But this is at least what we've discovered. So this is what we, at this point in time, know.
Yeah.
You can't say it's 100%.
Right.
Like with civilization and the writing system, you cannot say it's a 100% there. It's just that as of this point in time, we know that it started there because that's the oldest that we currently found. And I think that...
And finding glue is different than finding paper, I guess, is my only point.
Yeah.
Like it would be difficult to find paper from any point in history. And if you have people that are intelligent as we are today, evolving at different parts of the planet in different groups as parts of different species, in isolation from each other potentially, and if they are just small groups of people or societies, in the case of Test Templar, these are people that are as smart as we are today. It's just it's difficult to know what they were capable of, and what they were actually doing. I'm with you. It would be awesome to have like a time machine to go back into.
So my thing is always never underestimate.
Right.
So look at like Homo erectus, one of the very first human species, emerging at least 2 million years ago. Within 200,000 years, they were already at Georgia, the country of Georgia for the American viewers. So it's a country in Eurasia. At the Dmanisi cave, they found Homo erectus fossils. Then they reached Indonesia by 1.6 or 1.5 million years ago. So within 500,000 years of them emerging, they reached nearly the other side of the world. Don't underestimate ancient human species.
Right.
And don't underestimate the ancient Egyptians when it comes to like creating pyramids and things like that. Because they were intelligent and sophisticated, and they were more than capable of doing these things. The how, I can't say for 100% they created this by this method or by that method. All I know is that all the current known dates point to the ancient Egyptians being the creators and builders of these things. The ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. Exactly in the nitty-gritty detail of how they did it, we don't necessarily know. But we do know that it dates from that point in time.
You've been to Egypt a couple times.
Yeah.
Do you think that we have all of the tools that the Egyptians were using? No. Okay.
No. I also think that people underestimate the way sand and water friction can create and cut and smooth and polish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think they did it with all those? Just so like just the Great Pyramid as an example, like with all of those blocks, 2.5 million blocks. How do you think that they were able to quarry, cut, transport, place all of those blocks?
So I've never, like, this is a fun thing. I've never fully researched the construction of the pyramids. And there is one of the reasons that I didn't do that as of this point in time yet has to do with the fact that I don't think we've got the full story yet.
Right.
So I can research it,
but nobody knows.
But then I will still have some mystery questions in the back of my head, and I will never be able to let them go. Yeah. So I like to sleep at night, and I prefer my sanity. Yeah. It's very simple like that. Sometimes you have to know when not to dive in, because I will go down a rabbit hole, and I will keep falling down up until I find that point of this makes sense.
Right.
And because there's still some mystery to it for me personally, I just know I won't be able to sleep for the next 15 years. Yeah. Because I will just keep researching, and life doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Right.
So I think that they did create it. It's just that the nitty-gritty detail of exactly how they could have used water, they could have used, like Wally Wallington showed, ways of making a block stand up, things like that. It's all very possible. And I like the mystery a little bit, at least in some points of ancient history that I'm researching. I don't want to know everything yet. Mm-hmm. Because the more I learn, the more I figure out that, I actually don't know that much. And that's because I learn more and more. So I have a question and I get an answer. But what happens is then I have 10 more questions because of the research that I did, and there are still some mystery things, and then 10 questions, and then I get some answers, and I get more questions and more questions, and that's my ripple effect when it comes to ancient history, and I want to know everything. That's my problem. Yeah.
What's the most interesting part of Egypt for you, of ancient Egypt?
Of ancient Egypt, so when it comes to structures, it's definitely the pyramids. Starting with the Step Pyramid of Djoser, because I think that's one of the most beautiful pyramids there are. I've been inside it, and I've always loved it from pictures and stuff, and always dreamed about it. And it's not just a pyramid; it's an entire complex surrounding it, and the entire complex itself is incredible. The smoothness of some of the stones is just beautiful. So they were very sophisticated, and you can see some of the evolution of pyramid building when looking at the Step Pyramid of Djoser for sure. But when it comes to the ancient Egyptians and the rulers and their ways of life, the biggest thing I have is Pharaoh Hatshepsut. That's I can read about her, I can dream about her. I will never be able to let this go. She was incredible. She made the country thrive. She did not go to war. But she expanded their area a little bit through some of the campaigns that she put out, and they were just thriving under her rule. They created some of the biggest obelisks that we know of. The temples created in her name were very sophisticated. Her temple I think it's I'm flunking on the name. This is bad. So at the Valley of the Kings, you have the Temple of Hatshepsut, mortuary temple. Incredible. The sophistication of building that. Amazing. And then you have her, here you can see it. Yeah, Der El Bahari. Ugh, the names. Ugh, it's all names, But it's incredible. I've been there. I've walked around it. It's absolutely gobsmackingly beautiful. And she had a nephew / stepson, Tutmosis, I think Tutmosis III. people often believe that he was the one trying to erase her from history. I don't see that. And people still believe this and push that idea and that narrative, even the media. So I read once in like one small snippet of a massive paper around her life and death and all that stuff. There was one little snippet that at the Red Chapel in Karnak Temple, created for her, almost all of her depictions are scratched out. But that there is one depiction of her in the way that they would depict pharaohs being dead, with Tutmosis next to her. And it was created after she died. So I actually found the one stone that this is on. I'll have to share the picture later. I'm going to have to like really, really search in my phone. I've got like 25,000 pictures on my phone.
Okay.
I understand a little bit, like within this time limit, I have to find it, but it's going to take me at least like 10 minutes. So I'll send that later and so you can show it on the screen if you want in the podcast.
Cool.
But I was actually there with an Egyptologist and I told her about me trying to find this one depiction. And she told me, like, she stared at the depictions of the Red Chapel a lot. And she had never found it. And I told her, but it has to be very high up because Egyptian people aren't very tall. I'm tall. Like, I'm Dutch, I'm a giant, it's fine. But most Egyptians are very short. So would they look at the highest row of depictions often? Probably not. So I took her to the temple, the Red Chapel, and we went there. And so I was looking around, and in like 15 minutes, I found it. And I tapped her on the shoulder, and I said, look, Sohaila, it's there. And she's like, no, it's not there. I've checked. And I'm like, no, it's there. And so I pointed her to exactly the stone, and she started crying, actually crying, because I did found it. And she was like, I can't believe this. I've been looking for the one depiction all these years and I've never found it. And it was just there. It's just that you have to know exactly which of the stones it is. And it's on the top row, all the way to the right in the corner. People don't really look at that because all the depictions around you are already grabbing your attention. Everything around you is already grabbing you. Why would you look at that one small depiction on that one stone in that one section in the temple? Mm-hmm. But she started crying and she translated the text, the hieroglyphics on it. And yes, that was Queen Hatshepsut depicted as she was already deceased with Tutmosis next to her, honoring her. So her, I think this might actually be it, yeah. But I'll see if I can
Good find, Ryan.
Find it on my phone as well. But this shows that he was not the one who tried to erase her from history. It was probably his predecessor or successor or whatever, how you want to call it. Because Queen Hatshepsut has been erased from history nearly completely. For a long time, it was not even thought to be a possibility that a woman had ruled Egypt during that time.
Wow. What was
all
the thumbnail stuff that you were dealing with a couple of months ago?
Yeah, I get this a lot. So I, of course, I make thumbnails and I show a picture of myself in my thumbnail so that people already know it's a blonde woman telling you about history. A lot of people don't accept that I do this, and especially some men. They say that I pose or that I use my body to get clicks and things like that. And I'm like, but men pose in their videos, thumbnails as well.
Yeah, men are trying to look good, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't I wear a little bit of makeup so I don't look dead on screen?
Right.
But yeah, no, I often get told that I try to use my assets, and with that they mean my female chest, my chesticles, as I call them. So, sorry. So yeah, I often call them my chesticles because I can't cut them off, and it's part of you now. But it's fine. Yeah. So that they tell me that I use that to get clicks and entice people to click on my videos and get views and get money. If I wanted to use my body to get money, I would have had an OnlyFans.
Right.
I don't have an OnlyFans, and I'm always covered nearly until the neck. I mean, come on. It's very obvious that I don't want to use my body like that. I also don't even think my body looks great or that I myself look good. I have a very strong hate towards like this, and it's become an acceptance at this point. I'm like nearly 33. It's going to take me a long time to eventually like be happy with what I got. But yeah, no, I was bullied insanely when I was younger. I was always called the ugly one, and it was a thing. So I have like zero self-esteem when it comes to that. So about 5 years ago, I went to a therapist, and the therapist told me, you maybe have to like start taking selfies. And I'm like, I hate my face. Why do you want me to do that? Well, you get to learn to accept it by being exposed to it. And that's one of the reasons I also started my channel. I started to film myself and like have to listen to my own voice, which is horrid, by the way. I feel sorry for you and Ryan, like having to listen to this. I'm sorry. It's terrible.
To you?
But yeah, I hate my own voice.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's the worst. Having to edit while looking at my face and all my weird facial expressions and then this voice and then all of that together. And it's like editing, I can do it very quickly because I hate everything.
That's
so
funny.
it's just go through.
You gotta work
Done.
on this.
Oh yeah, no, I hate it.
You gotta get to the bottom of this. Yeah, Ryan's the same way with his voice. He can't listen to himself. I think he's getting better about it, but there's some ways to overcome this, and I think like listening to yourself and just full acceptance of yourself is one of those ways. Just to know that it's like it's not the reality of the situation. Like it's like we're creating that about ourselves, whether it's body dysmorphia or whatever it is. It's just. Well, good for you for starting a channel then and attempting, like having the courage to go through all that.
I mean, I told the therapist, I want to watch, and I look into the mirror because I have to brush my teeth. And she was like, honey, this is not good.
Right.
You got to do something about this. Yeah. So I don't take pictures of myself to sell myself. It's really a part of accepting who I am. And the reason I sometimes post them online, and I don't post all the selfies that I take, but I sometimes post one online and then I get attacked for the fact that I do that. And I'm like, part of accepting myself is sharing the way I look with other people.
It's not like you're not wearing anything. Like you're like
I said,
like
I'm covered up
sleeves.
until like the neck.
So what's the...
I've not shown cleavage anywhere in any of my videos.
Right.
In the past nearly 5 years that I've had a channel.
Right. So,
if I wanted to do that, I would have done it. I wear my everyday clothes. So for me, it's very important to be okay in my own skin. People say I wear tight t-shirts or tight sweaters. They don't understand. I was abused physically as a child for 9 years straight. I was hit, kicked, slapped out of the blue at any point in time. So I currently wear a little bit of a looser fit. I have a tank top underneath. I don't handle clothes out of the blue touching my skin because it's a trauma response. It makes me flinch. So whenever I wear baggy things, I have something tight underneath. But when I wear a t-shirt, like a normal t-shirt that I feel okay in because the fabric is nice and it fits me and it hugs my skin, it has nothing to do with tight and showing boobs or whatever. It has to do with the fact that that's a trauma response for me. And I feel okay in clothes that fit me. Just like men wearing muscle fit.
Sure.
How dare they wear muscle fit and show off their muscles? It's all, just create an OnlyFans already. I mean, come on.
Right.
Why am I being held to that? Is it just because I'm a woman? I didn't ask to be born as a woman. In fact, as a young girl, I often cried myself to sleep that I hated the fact that I was a girl and I was going to have my period, and then I got my period, and I cried myself to sleep that I hated the fact that I got my period. I'd never wanted to be a girl. It's not that I'm trans or anything. I am a girl, and I fully embrace it. But life for me would have been 1,000 times easier if I was born a boy. I mean, just peeing in itself would have been...
That's true.
Getting drunk and just la 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 la. Right. Come on, it's 10 times easier than what I have to do. You know, find a bathroom, pay for the bathroom, hope that it's clean, then find like pads on the walls, and it's like, oh God, I just want to pee in the bush. Would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
But no, for my life as a girl is 10 times rougher than it would have been than if I was born a boy. Mm-hmm. But then I get people don't take me
I
seriously.
mean, the thing to realize about people attacking like you or your looks or your body or whatever it is that that's just their insecurities coming out. It has nothing to do with you. It's like their ego. It's their attempt to gain moral superiority over someone through judgment, through negative judgment, and through shaming.
Yeah.
And that's just like a conditioned thing. It's like it happens in a lot of families. It's conditioned through the parents. And it's just something that it comes from. It's an unfortunate part of the human condition today that we're seeing and dealing with. But you have to know it has nothing to do with you. And you know the comments and stuff like this is why Joe Rogan doesn't read comments. You know, it's like
I know why. Wow.
I'm fortunate people have been.
You want to see my block list on YouTube with
I
my
bet
hidden words?
I bet it's extreme.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna exceed the amount of letters that I can use very quickly when it comes to this. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you handle it well.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And good for you for overcoming all of the past and being present and doing your thing in the moment and not being afraid to put yourself out there and start a channel. And because I know it takes some courage. It takes some courage to do that. Yeah.
It actually does. Putting yourself out there and having people watch you.
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, then you can hear about it for like weeks on end.
Right. Yeah.
Or then 2 years later, someone brings it up again and you're like, oh, I thought everyone forgot that.
Yeah.
So I toured Egypt for about 5 weeks in 2022 with Adept Expeditions and NEXT. A lot of fun. 5 weeks in Egypt is a little bit too long, but you get to the Great Pyramid twice in the span of 5 weeks.
I see Johanna James with you as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
The first tour. So the first tour was hers, and I was her guest on that tour, and she had to leave early because she had to film a TV show. So I spent about a week and a half with her. Then she left, and then I stayed. And after that, did my own tour. A lot of fun. But at her tour, we went to the Edfu Temple. And this was an experience. So this was nearly on the anniversary of my grandma passing, and my grandma loved owls. And I was mentally not doing the greatest at that point. Because, it's nearly been a year that the woman that felt like a mom to me passed. And I'm in a different country. I'm not with my family. My family was getting together. And I walked into the Edfu Temple. So you get like on these carriages with horse carriages. That's the only way to get from the boats to the temple. Really chaotic. So your adrenaline is through the roof, all that stuff. You enter the temple. And all the people there were just staring up to the right as you enter. And I was like, what are they looking at? So I asked NEXT, like, what are they looking at? And he's like, oh, hey, there's an owl there. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Are owls here often? And he's like, I've never seen one. Let me ask someone. So he asked a couple people that were working at the temple for like years. Some of them worked there for 40 years. They had never seen an owl there.
Really?
So he took a picture of me looking up at the owl from behind me. So you can see the owl on my arm that I tattooed for my grandma, and you can see the owl in the distance. It's one of those experiences that shows the mystery of life a little bit to me. You don't know what happens to you after you die, but there's at least something, I think. So she was looking at me that day, letting me know that everything's going to be fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. And you want to show your tattoo?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be visible.
It ought to be. It's way on the back.
Yeah, it's way on the back.
Yeah.
So I'll share it later.
Cool.
Like I told Ryan, like it's on my Instagram, and I'll share the pictures later.
That's really cool. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And so 40 years had never seen an owl in that location.
No, owls really aren't that known in that area.
Yeah, I'd never heard of an owl in that part of Egypt. Yeah, that's really cool. So, have you ever had any other kind of spiritual or what would be the word? Spiritual experiences before, or paranormal experiences before?
So, when my grandmother's mother passed, I was 12. So I've known both my great grandmothers. One passed when I was 10, and the other passed when I was 12. So I went to the service of my my grandmother's mother. And the day after I was home and I was looking in the mirror, I was just like tying up a ponytail. And as I dropped my right hand down, there was just some weird warmth on my shoulder. And I remembered the last time my great-grandmother touched me was on that point. So I don't know. I feel like there's something after death. Yeah.
It's pretty much scientifically proven that energy can't be destroyed and that it continues. So, yeah. All right. Well, we won't get too deep into that, but what else in Egypt? You had mentioned that fascinates you, and I would like to ask you about the vases maybe, but you had mentioned the whale bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this location known as Wadi al Hitan in Egypt. So it's a bit more south than Cairo. It's quite in the middle of the desert. So back in the day, I think it was 1902 when the first bones were discovered to protrude out of the sand. And then in the 80s, I think Philip Gingerich is his name, started to like excavate there. And he discovered like massive Basilosaurus fossils. And some of them had like hind legs. And what? And it was like, okay, wait. Whales with hind legs? So they actually discovered through that part of the evolutionary tale of whales. So whales, as most animals, you get from a water animal to a land-based animal. That's how evolution started. But then the whales, their ancestors were like, let's go back into the water. And that's why they are mammals. They have to like come up to breathe and stuff like that. So here you can see like the hind limb cast of the Basilosaurus. It's incredible.
And when were those supposed to have lived?
I think about 37 million years ago.
Okay. And they were whales with hind legs.
Yeah. So you can still see that they were way more closely related to like the land-based animal that was their ancestral species.
So the whale bones that we find in the desert in Egypt, do they all have these hind legs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have the Dorudon, the Basilosaurus, and there's another one, Aigicetus gehennae. And that was the first late Eocene protocetid. So there was the Tethys Ocean, where the Sahara Desert is currently located, and in the Tethys Ocean, these beasts would roam around. So they would still have to like go up for water and like up for air. Whales do that nowadays as well, but now they can stay underwater for much longer than back then. But yeah, so there was like a land animal went back into the water, then had to still lay like eggs and stuff like on land, like procreate on land and all that stuff. And eventually that led into them doing all of that underwater as well, first on like shallow banks. And now whales can just do that. And evolutionary speaking, that's insane. So you have like water animal, land-based animal, back into like a water-based animal.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they also found other species there. So they found like a shark tooth from an extinct shark species that lived there a long time ago as well. Let's see, the shark tooth was from like 40 million years ago, 41 million years ago.
Okay.
Crazy. They also found, Sirenians and reptiles. They found skeletons of them as well, but just not as many as the whale skeletons from the Basilosaurus and the Dorudon. Yeah.
So how much of the area was underwater?
Well, you can still see, like, if you look at like the Sahara there, you can see those lines and squibbles and stuff. Like, that used to be the seabed.
Up in here, up in like the desert area.
That used to be the seabed.
Okay. So this looks like, I've talked about this stuff with other guests prior, and this stuff looks like, so this is supposedly wind damage. So this was supposedly created by wind in northern Africa. And the interesting part about it is that it kind of creates this, it starts up here and it comes in up here, and it sort of circles around and then goes out this direction, and you've got all of these deposits of salt that are
Yeah.
all over the place. You've got a volcano here, Emikusi, that has actually salt inside of it, and it erupted, say, not crazy long ago, but you've got salt deposits in there. And then all of these kind of striations just continue out to the west and go over to the west and then out here, ultimately into the ocean past the Rishat structure.
I think it's partially both. Partially like from the old seafloor, because a seafloor can also have like channels and rivers. Often people forget that the bottom of the sea can still have like channels and rivers that flow in their own direction and with their own speed, and it carves out into the seabed. And partially it's wind erosion, because when it was no longer covered in water, the wind had like free reign. So of course that carves it out even more. I think it's a combination of the two. I'm not an expert on any of this, but that's my best explanation, I think, in my mind. So if you go back to like Egypt, so it's there. And it's such a unique location compared to like the rest of Egypt. I think it's about a 4-hour drive from Cairo, which is not too bad for Egypt speaking. A little under 4 hour, I think. But I have to go there one day, and I hope I can get a tour done next year where we will visit the whale bones in the desert. I have to see that with my own eyes. Like I might not be able to touch, but it's fine. I just want to see.
Your thoughts on the vases?
I think they're beautiful, but I have no expertise on it.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in anything, but like especially with vases like these, I don't know how any of that works with like validity, how all of the paperwork goes, how it's proven that something is legitimate. I have zero expertise on that. I can look at it and I can think they look beautiful, and some of them really look pristine and beautifully made. Not that I have an explanation on exactly how they were made. I think that sand and water were definitely used in the creation of them because of the friction, and you can like cut and shape stone with the use of sand and water if you do that in the right way. But besides that, I can look at them and think that this is pretty awesome. It's for me, it's difficult, things like that, because I also have to remind myself that I am not knowledgeable on a lot of things.
Right.
And I think that that's okay as well. Like I would love to have an expert talk to me about it in full detail and just give me a complete rundown on like, this is what we know. I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because we don't know much about much. So yeah, it's tricky to get. That's why I'm trying to study them and get to the bottom of them, but a lot more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah. But that's often what happens with like history and like science and research and all that stuff. You have a question and you get an answer, but then 10 more questions pop up.
Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Yep.
Hate when that happens.
It's it's a common occurrence.
Yeah.
So what any drama happening? What's interesting with the drama?
So there's a lot of drama in history. Who would have thunk? Holy hell. My Lord. Yeah. I thought, let me do just some like ancient history stuff. It would be like a lot of stuffy people would do this. Would be good. No drama, no high school shit. Right. Holy hell. It's worse than high school.
Yeah.
So you have people on both sides that are very vocal, and some of them want others to pick sides. And I think that's a bit of an issue at this point, because why do there need to be sides per se? Like we all have a same sort of passion. We go about it in a different way. But like I'm friends with people in the alternative sphere, like Johanna James. She's one of my best friends. I love her. I would die for her. Like no question asked. She's amazing, and I have such a good bond with her. We have some really interesting conversations when it comes about ancient history. She loves the mystery, and she believes in Atlantis. I don't. But that's not going to make me...
She's 100 year zero? Or do you think that there's a possibility?
I've not seen evidence for it to be a possibility. So I'm more towards like a 10. So yeah.
Plato's talking about it.
Yeah, but it's more like
that brings you from 0 to 10.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Okay. All
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, I can't say for certain that it's not, but there's a slight chance, maybe, plausibly.
Yeah. So do you feel kind of pulled do people on the, I know you've done stuff with Minuteman, you've done stuff with, what's his name? Dibble, you know, you got great friends like Johanna on, you know, and so there's some academic.
I've done stuff with Johanna as well on my channel multiple times. So that's for me, like, I personally don't necessarily see sides like that.
Right.
I just see people who are very interested in history. And like with Jana, she does her own research. She sometimes finds like these topics that I would never have thought about. And I like her work, and I like her personality and her charisma. And on a personal level, she and I are quite close. And after my surgery earlier this year, she was one of the few people that kept reaching out to me, asking me how I was doing. Only a friend would do that. You know, like if you're not friends, you're not going to do that. So, and she had a surgery of her own around the same time. So we kept tabs on each other. Like, how are you doing, girl? But I don't always have to talk history with her as well. We've had some really good conversations about like ancient history and her views and my views. And she always knew I leaned more towards the scientific side, towards the academic side. Not that I'm a part of it, but I never spoke out about me being of that side. And then I was pushed into that label by other people. And I mean, I didn't fight it because I didn't think that it was necessary to fight. If you watch my stuff, you know that I'm quite open still to possibilities. It's one of the reasons I think you invited me to be here.
Yeah, it is.
Even though I lean towards the scientific method, that doesn't mean that I'm 100% of that side. I'm open-minded. And I think it's good for people like me to join spaces like this, to show your viewers that, hey, this is the way I research history and the way I view the ancient world, and let me share that with you. And if you find that interesting, you can look at my channel and look at my videos. But I'm not going to alienate people just for their beliefs or their perception.
So I wanted to ask you about South America a little bit and some of the blocks that exist in South America, because the stonework there is, I just got back a couple of weeks ago, was absolutely blown away by the work there. The explanation for how the blocks were created is hammers, and that things were hammered on and pounded on, and that is what creates these stones that look like this, that were just fit together perfectly. There's been an earthquake here, and you can see that some of the stones have slid back.
Yeah.
On the front of the stones, you can see the hammer marks. It's like potted, and there's all these tiny little holes from there we're hammering on it. There's that's a good all over these rocks. You can see the hammer marks, but where the stones lay on top of each other, it's totally smooth. And on almost every one of these sites, you see this red stuff in the cracks.
Yeah.
It's like this orangish, reddish like stuff that's just stuck on there. It doesn't come off. You can scratch it. It's like it would take, like, I don't even know what it would take, metal or something scraping on this stuff potentially to get it off. You can't get it off. But it's just odd to me that where you see evidence of the rock sliding back on an earthquake, where you have it's totally smooth, where the rocks connect with each other and where they touch each other. And the hammer marks are clearly visible on the front, but they're not visible where they're laying on top of each other. So I guess I don't understand the traditional explanation for how these rocks were actually truly worked. If it was hammers, I mean, you need thousands and thousands of people that would need to polish the inside after they got done with the hammers, and to polish the inside, as opposed but why they would care about polishing the inside but not the outside is beyond me. So it's just a huge, I think it's a mystery. I don't think we know how these things were made. And I think the red substance that's between the stones is a huge mystery. We don't know what that is. I think it could be anything. It could be a part of the process if they were used to soften the stones potentially. And that's why they fit together so perfectly, and that's why they puff out, and that's why there's no hammer marks between them. And so I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that topic as we kind of move into South America.
Yeah, so I did see NEXT respond to you on Twitter about the red substance, and that he agreed that there's definitely something there. For me, on the top of my head, when I think about stones and smoothing things and like all that, I always go back to like sand and clay and all that stuff, and it could have been like a reddish clay with a lot of silica, because silica is really hard, and you can like definitely use that to polish stones quite quickly and easily. Would the red substance then be ingrained by the rock due to like the friction, maybe like the heat? Possible. I'm not a geologist, so I'm not very knowledgeable on that kind of stuff, but I do think it's very interesting, and maybe they can like see if they can get some of that red substance off.
That would be
in
nice.
any way, I don't know, but like investigate research and like see if they can figure out what that red substance is, because I did see you post quite a lot of photos and like videos where you can see the red substance, and like NEXT, who went there quite recently this year, also said that he saw it like in a lot of places.
Yeah.
It could potentially hold a clue. But yeah, it would be good to like investigate what is the red substance? Like, is it a part of like a clay, or like that it was rubbed in so hard, or like it got so hot that it's now part of like the rock underneath? It's possible, but like I want to know. I just now I want answers.
No, I know, me too.
Yeah,
me too. Yeah,
you just put another question in my head.
I know. Yeah, you gotta get your research in this one.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself for not. I think it would have been highly illegal to scrape some of it off, but you would have literally need. I mean, it was as hard on there as the rock itself. It was like it didn't seem like clay. Like, I mean, and it was on the like the face.
Yeah,
of
was it
where
like in between? Because you've seen some of the rocks like slip off a little bit. Like, was it underneath there as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. In several places, in several locations. One was Machu Picchu at the Temple of the Three Windows. The massive blocks, perfectly cut somehow. Say cut, but who knows? I mean,
cut shaped, whatever.
Yeah. And and it was in there. It was in several where the rock had slid back, or where an earthquake had happened and they had separated. So yeah, it was all over the place, and only on the walls where they had clearly, where there's no mortar, and they perfectly fit together. Like every block perfectly fit together without any kind of seam or crack or break or space. I mean, that's where you saw them, unless some like an earthquake had separated them, or they'd kind of shifted.
Yeah.
So it was pretty crazy.
That's pretty crazy indeed.
Yeah. What else are you working on in South America? You're interested in that Maya city?
Yeah. I often look at like the new archaeological discoveries, and it's also like a playlist on my channel. So I look at like if there's an article coming out, like recently there was an article about like this Maya city that was actually huge in the state of Campeche in Mexico. And I think it's nearly 2,000 years old at the oldest parts of it, but they have not been able to do any groundwork. So they're trying to get that in like progress and like actually excavate there possibly in the upcoming years. And I would definitely love that. Yeah, you can see it here. Like, this is what they know from just looking at the LiDAR. And you've seen some houses, and you see like a ball court, and I don't understand how archaeologists are able to like see this from simple LiDAR scans. They understand like the entire the way that the Mayas built things, and they can recognize it. I won't be able to do that.
They're guessing in large. I mean, they're it's educated guesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, their educated guesses compared to like my educated guess would be a lot better. But I'm very excited for them to actually excavate there.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good with the LiDAR that we've seen in the past couple years, compared to like people having to go there on the ground, and it was always very slow finding new cities and structures in the Amazon or in Mexico. And in the past couple years with the LiDAR, they can find so many things compared to like a decade or two ago. This was found by I think it was a student who wanted to know more about this area in Mexico and if there was like ancient structures there. And he went on a Google search to see if it was LiDAR scanned in the past, because LiDAR scans are really expensive and often the funds are just not there. So he went on Google to see if there was like a scan already made. And on like page 16 of his Google search, like I don't even go beyond page 4, like, hello, I've got a life. On page 16 of his Google search, he discovered that there was a LiDAR scan of the area commissioned by some carbon emission project that like made scans to see the carbon emission and all that stuff. Amazing, like incredible. It was like he's working on he's a PhD student, but that LiDAR survey, the people who made that survey, that were commissioned for this carbon emission project, they had no archaeologists with them. They never realized. And this was made in like 2013, so more than a decade ago. And now archaeologists are looking at the scans because of this student, and they discovered a huge Maya city. And there's a highway just like right next to it. People are living there. The people are just like farming the land around them, and they had no idea, or like they possibly could have known that there was at least something, but that it was probably like a massive Maya city, they wouldn't have known.
The crazy thing is that these are everywhere. In the Amazon, like in the jungle down there, from Mexico to Brazil to
I think
Peru to everywhere.
Earlier in this year, they found like a massive city in the Amazon near Ecuador, or like in Ecuador, that was like 2,500 years old.
It's like everywhere they look. Everywhere they look, they're finding stuff in the Amazon. It's crazy. And the LiDAR is getting cheaper because they're using drones now to be able to fly the LiDAR. So that helps. But yeah, it's like, it's literally everywhere. And it makes you wonder, like, how many people were really down in the Amazon and when? And because I hear the dates about 2,000 years and 2,500 years. That's clearly because we're guessing. First off, we're guessing. Nothing's been, I mean, and
it's an educated guess.
It's an educated guess. And it's clearly because what they do think they know is that that's when the Maya civilization existed. And so it must have been the Maya people, and that's who did this. But that's a guess. I mean, it could be that
it could predate.
It could absolutely predate. Until they get down there and start excavating and dating things.
I think that the Olmecs predate the Maya.
Yeah.
At least by a little bit. So it could even be like an Olmec city. Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah. But even that stuff, like the Olmecs, like those heads that were quote unquote intentionally buried, like, I mean, how old could that stuff be? What if it wasn't intentionally buried? If they like did the dating properly, but it depends on when they dated it. Because like radiocarbon dating isn't always perfect. And I put more faith and like belief inside or like in the optical luminescence dating, because they are able to see when it was buried, like when it was last hit by sunlight and things like that. I think optical luminescence dating is far more reliable, and a lot of academics agree with me on this. So that's why they keep using it more and more. It's quite new. It's quite a new technology compared to like radiocarbon dating that's been around for quite a while now. I think optical luminescence dating will evolve and give us way more answers in the future. And I'm very excited for that. I think it's good that I was born in this time period, because technology is advancing so fast. And we are now, in the past couple years, having new technologies that a decade or two ago weren't even thought as a possibility. And I think that's gonna keep going. Mm-hmm. Do you know where optical luminescence dating is occurring? I heard that it's like that there's a couple of areas like in France that you can ship stuff there, because I'm looking at getting some of these things. And my understanding is right now it's only granite that can be dated. I was talking to Danny Hillman a couple of days ago. He's the guy that did all that work on Genung Padang, and he's going to come on the show in a couple of months. But my understanding is that it's so young, that optical luminescence dating, and that it's not that it's like it's only certain parts of the world and it's only certain stones like granite. But
I do know that they did optical luminescence dating on some of the fossilized footprints. and they did optical luminescence dating quite recently in La Garma, in the La Garma cave in, I think it was Spain, where they found like a 16,000-year-old Paleolithic hut inside the cave. I quickly made a video on that, but from my recollection in my research, I almost know for certain that they used optical luminescence dating all there.
Okay.
So I think it's getting more out there, but I can definitely ask some of like the academics or like my sister to see where the dating is done. Would be really nice to do some more research with that. But I do think it's at this point like still quite expensive because it's quite young, and that makes it more expensive. If it evolves, like advances a little bit more, it probably gets more cheaper and more available to other people as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, maybe heading back to the during the break, we talked a little bit about we went back to human evolution, and one of the things that we had missed from earlier when talking about ancient humans and what it asked about like medicine and how do they treat each other, and then you had mentioned at lunch that there was actually a what was it, an amputation that had occurred.
So this is earlier we were talking about like Neanderthals and how they would care and like their medicine and stuff. So this is more like Homo sapiens. So about 31,000 years ago, there was a child around the age of 10 on the island of Borneo in Indonesia, and it seemed to have had a surgical amputation of a lower leg. You can see it on the screen. Yeah, it's the lower leg bone around the shin, and they amputated the bone below. The child survived and actually lived for nearly another decade afterwards. And this happened 31,000 years ago. So this means that the people who did this, who carried out the surgical amputation, had the knowledge of amputation, the knowledge on how to stop blood flow, on knowledge about like anesthetics, that they probably drugged the kid like pretty badly, but I mean, it survived. It's fine.
Yeah, I would hope it would be drugged.
And they would have probably had to known at least a little bit about like antiseptics, because the kid did not go in shock. It did not die. It didn't die from like infection or anything like that. The kid afterwards was probably completely useless to the community, but it lived for nearly another decade. So there was a high level of care, and I don't think it's a religious or ritualistic aspect in that. It was just, that's a member of our community. We're going to help it. And it's going to have to survive, and it lived for another decade. It's crazy. So you can see on the bone, you can see where the amputation was carried out. You can see some of the marks left by their tools. It was probably done with stone tools, flint, and like all that stuff. Flint is very, very sharp if you make the right tools. And you can see some bone growth near it, but at the point of where it was like cut, you can actually see like the marks that were left.
Is that the red highlighted the area there?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Crazy.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
It's crazy. And so you can tell by the bone growth that it was another 10 years because it was a child in the bone.
Yeah, you can see that the bone was still in growth while it was amputated.
Wow.
Just that where it was cut, it's just done.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
but to think that like 100 years ago, people would still die during amputations. This was carried out like 31,000 years ago.
Crazy.
Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you're saying it was aliens?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Has to be aliens.
I mean, it has to be aliens.
Has to be aliens.
Talking about anesthetics, talking about like these unknown
These
tools.
were the Martians or the Venusians.
Yeah. It's got to be.
Got to be.
Anunnaki.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's silly to think that people in ancient times weren't intelligent.
Right.
They were. We don't need, like in my mind, we don't need an advanced lost civilization to explain these things.
Yeah.
People were intelligent. Like you can see clearly from this that they had a level of skill and intelligence, and they were able to do incredible things.
Right. And people were just living in pockets back then. Like people were living in groups of like whatever, small groups. And so in order for them to somehow have this knowledge of, what did you say? Anesthetics?
Anesthetics, antiseptics, stopping blood flow.
Yeah. Like, how do you learn that living in a group of 6 people?
Yeah, it's not like a group of 6 people probably, but more like 30, 40, 50.
Yeah. So even then.
But like, look at like Neanderthals. They lived in like super small groups, 20, maybe 30. And that was considered big.
Right.
And because they also reproduced at such a slower rate than us. But like we humans, we Homo sapiens, because we live in a larger group, the eldest would have the knowledge and would pass that on. And then they would learn more. And so it all gets added to the knowledge that they already have. How they figured out how to stop blood flow, anesthetics, antiseptics, I don't know how they figured it out. They apparently did.
What would have been used as those 2 antiseptics?
I'm not sure what kind of antiseptic plants grow on Borneo, but I do think that there is at least 1 or 2 that could be used as an antiseptic. And for anesthetics, well, I bet there's drugs there. Just live in, like grow in from the plants and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a mushroom or 2.
Yeah.
Could be. Here we have something. The fruit of the Pangium edule tree can be used as an antiseptic when processed properly. I think I remember something about this. Indeed, yeah, when I made my video. It was like, it's quite a while ago that I made that video. But yeah, they have a plant there that could be used as an antiseptic.
What's your % chance that there was a society back in those days?
In about 31,000 years ago?
Yeah.
There's a small chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. For society, like I often say, like the birth of society is in like the Anatolian Plateau in Turkey, mostly because of the fact that they started building things. So like that part of society, I think, started there. But like society itself and like community building and like caring for each other, I think that goes back a little bit further.
It's just to understand the plants that you're surrounded with and to understand how to use them medically.
But like orangutans also use plants to heal their own wounds. So this was quite recent. I'm not sure if Ryan can find this, but recently they found an orangutan that had like a wound on its face. And it used a plant that they chewed on because it was a painkiller. But they also put the plant on the substance of the plants that they chewed on, put that on the wound as well. Yeah, here you can see. So it actually healed its own injury. That's an orangutan. That
it's
has
not
no
an amputation, but
it's not an
still
amputation.
impressive.
But I mean, having like medical knowledge about like plants and what plants can do things, I think that goes even back further than humans itself.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, like we lost the knowledge because we rely on our phones.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the issues that we currently face in our society or civilization.
And we're not interacting with a balanced world anymore. We're not like walking out into nature and finding plants and interacting with plants. And we're mowing them down and chopping them down and planting stuff that looks pretty. And so
I think we're slowly losing our touch with nature.
Quickly.
Yeah. Well, probably quickly, yeah. Like, I think back in the day in like the Stone Age, the now extinct humans, the human species, I should say, and even us Homo sapiens, like back in the day when we had to build shelters to like survive and things like that, I think our personal space would have been a lot bigger than our personal space currently is. Like my cats still have that. If I stand up in my living room and I just want to grab something from the refrigerator, my cat in its 2-meter high scratch post does not respond, does not twitch, nothing. The moment I stand up, because I had it in my mind that I want to touch his tail, he wakes up. Like, dude, I'm on the other side of the room and you already woke up just because I thought about it.
Right.
He knows something's going to invade my personal space. I think we humans lost that ability over time. So I did a test with my ex who always slept really, really deep. You could not wake that dude up. Like you could just pants together, all that kind of stuff, make noise. He would just sleep through it. Like he would sleep through his alarm clock at least 5 times a week. And so I held my hand near his face while he was sleeping. He woke up instantly because I invaded his personal space. And I think that now it's like this close. For my cat, it's like the other side of the room. I think we lost that ability to have that be more further away from us.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's a survival mechanism that we are losing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like it's like knowing when someone's about to call you on the phone because they're thinking about you. It's you thinking about your boyfriend and getting into his space, and then him knowing that you're there. I talked to Stefan Burns a little bit, and he explained it as who's a astrophysicist person and space weather guy, brilliant guy. His thought on that phenomenon is that it's the Schumann resonance, which is essentially light is trapped between Earth's surface and the magnetosphere, and it bounces off, and it's constantly bouncing off. And the wavelength of this specific wavelength of light is the exact length of the circumference of the Earth, but it's basically it's a resonance of light that's bouncing back and forth, and that's all around us. And the theory on it is that light that it's been trapped for millions and millions and millions of years, and that it's carrying information with it, and that it can carry information from the prefrontal from the temporal lobes of one individual to the next, because it's almost like bouncing information off of a satellite to a phone, but you're bouncing information from a brain to a brain, and the information is moving through this Schumann resonance. And so I think it explains a lot of like potentially psychic behavior and psychic capabilities and stuff like what you're describing.
Yeah. I think that could definitely be a explanation. Like when my boyfriend and I started talking, we would often like before the other one like was finished typing, because they typed a little bit. He always types in like half sentences. It's a thing. I don't understand why people do that. I don't understand why he does that, but he does. So he often types in like half sentences because he just types enter so fast. And then I would finish his sentence often. And he was like, how do you do that? How do you know exactly what I want to say? And maybe we were just in like the same wavelength or something.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
We're in the same Schumann wavelength. Yeah.
Because we often say like, oh, we're on the same wavelength. And for us, it's more of like a joke. But I do understand that there could be a scientific explanation for that. Yeah. Definitely.
It's the one that makes the most sense for me to explain a lot of things that are completely, in my entire life, have been completely unexplainable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I dug that explanation.
That.
Yeah. Cool. So maybe we move to, I've got a couple of other topics to ask you about, and certainly anything that's on your mind, any work that you've done, research that you've done, I'd love to talk through as well. But the younger Dryas time period, there's so much. I feel like if in the 1980s the Clovis first thing was like you were a pseudoscientist if you talked about Clovis first back then. I feel like that's still the prevailing academic thought towards the younger Dryas as being a cataclysmic event that occurred. But it seems like there's so much evidence for that. Like it seems like there's and I want to hear your thoughts on it. So maybe what are your thoughts on that?
I think the younger Dryas is a ripple effect of multiple things happening nearly at the same time. So you had a volcano, the Lager See volcano in Germany, that erupted about 100 or 200 years before the Younger Dryas onset. That already, like that was a massive event, very cataclysmic for the Europeans back then. That weren't Europeans back then, but that's fine. There weren't Europeans yet, but there were people living on the Eurasian plateau. So that, in combination with this is like what's left of a massive volcano back in the day, but like that's a massive crater. So that has to have been a massive eruption. Large area that just got affected. So you also have Lake Agassiz with the meltwater that got free, that rippled into the Atlantic, and that it messed with the way the Atlantic flows. So you have to think about like the Atlantic as like a conveyor belt. It goes round and round and round and round. So you have wind And like water, it heats near the equator, then it goes to the Arctic, cools down, then it heats near the equator, and then it goes to the north and it cools down. And this is an effect like, this is a conveyor belt. This is always the same. But fresh water in combination with salt water in massive quantities, they don't fit. They don't go well together. It's a different substance, like the
Oil and vinegar.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like oil and vinegar. So Lake Agassiz's meltwater coming into the Atlantic messed with that conveyor belt that has an effect on the entire climate globally. And because in combination with that volcano in Europe, this meltwater, the conveyor belt of like how climate goes and how wind and everything, I think that is why the Younger Dryas onset started. And like that's the reason why we got into an ice age.
Out of the ice age.
Like the Younger Dryas itself is like into it and then out of it.
Oh, okay.
So the Younger Dryas is called this because of the Dryas flower that is growing in like super cold Arctic places. And during the Younger Dryas, it would have been growing more south. That's why we know that there was an ice age during that time. It's a short ice age. It's the Younger Dryas.
But the ice age started 2.4 million years ago and went all the way through to the beginning of the Younger Dryas. And then we were plunged into that cold period that you're talking about.
You have the Older Dryas, the Younger Dryas, and the ice age itself. It ended earlier, but then you have like the Billing-Allerod interstadial. So that was when it started to warm. The ice age ended, Billing-Allerod, it got warm. Older Dryas, so we have a dip. Then we go back to like normal, and then Younger Dryas, again, a dip. But the Older Dryas was like super short.
So when did the ice age that began 2.4 million years ago went until what? How many thousands of years ago?
Think about 15.
15.
About around there. That's when we started to heat up during the Billing-Allerod interstadial. And then we have like an Older Dryas. You can see the first dip from the Billing-Allerod, and then it goes back up, and then it goes back down. The second one, yeah, yes, that's the Older Dryas.
Do you think we're still in an ice age, or you think we're out of the ice age?
We will always be in an ice age or not. So like interstadial or ice age, it will always be one or the other. So we're currently not in an ice age, so we're in an interstadial.
Okay, same as...
Will this end? Yes, this interstadial period will end, and we humans are, of course, with our emissions, not are kind of like, we're quickening it a little bit with our messing with the way the Earth functions. But it will always have like ice ages, interstadial, ice ages, interstadial. It's a part of the conveyor belt of this planet, how the planet goes. You will have glaciers and then meltwater and glaciers and meltwater.
So interstadial is same as interglacial period. Yeah. And so there's been 4 of those or 5 of those in the last... I think
so, yeah.
Yeah, in the last couple million years.
Yeah.
And then, so how long do those typically last?
It depends.
Yeah.
One can last long, the other can last shortly. An interstadial can last for quite a while. But then when something messes with the conveyor belt of like the climate globally, it will make quite a quick shift. And a shift can be as quick as within 100 years. That's in the sense of like this planet being like billions of years old. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not even appropriate to say ice age. Like that's just the temperature of the Earth. Yeah. Like that's like it's colder than we think.
And we've been in a super long interstadial.
Yeah.
Interstadial that we are currently in is like really, really quite long. It didn't go as hot as some of the others, but it's still quite a long one compared to the others that we've had. And with the others, you can see like clear dips. We haven't seen our dip yet.
Right.
So that probably means that we go up and away into the heat, and then it will plunge down.
So it's potentially staying a little hotter because of human activity, maybe? It's delaying the potentially, possibly
But we don't know how much the crash effect.
Yeah. So goes. What is the catalyst for us, what looks like is going to happen pretty soon, plunging back into cold temperatures of an ice age?
It depends on a couple factors, I think. How much our carbon emission will affect the planet and the way for this planet to keep cooling itself, because we are warming it up. But I mean, the planet also tries to cool itself still. I'm not sure if the planet can hold that out for super much longer. Maybe a couple decades, maybe 100, 200 years. It's possible, but at the same time, it might be that within 50 years, we're going to drop into like an interglacial period. That's the weird thing about this. You don't really see it coming until it's there with this kind of stuff. Like we have the scientists that look at the climate, and we all know. We all know we're not being nice to this planet. We could be nicer, and we could have been nicer. Yeah, for sure. This planet gave us life. We're kind of like rubbing it in its face. You give me life, it's gonna ruin everything. It's a shame. But I think as long as the conveyor belt of the Atlantic isn't messed with at this point in time, and like I think the Pacific also has its own conveyor belt that we don't need to like forget.
It's a global conveyor belt, but
Yeah.
but you're right. The Atlantic conveyor belt that goes from like the Gulf up to where you live in the UK is when that gets disrupted. My understanding is when that gets disrupted, then that is going to plunge the Earth back into the
Because that's what
depths of the Ice
happened
Age.
during the Younger Dryas as well, because that conveyor belt got messed up.
Yeah, the
like
Gulf Stream.
Yeah, I knew that there was at least something in the Pacific as well, like
Right.
having to do with it. So they think that Europe keeps warming partially, but they also believe that if the conveyor belt gets messed up enough, that my part of Europe might be super, super cold because that ice part will just, the glaciers and all that stuff will just mess it up. So I'm not ready for that. My country is like way below sea level. My house is way below sea level.
Right.
I may be able to swim, but I don't think I can swim that well.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Not in that cold water.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's going to be a disaster. And scientists are actually predicting that this is going to happen within this century.
It's possible,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
That the Gulf Stream's going to get disrupted and that the global temperatures are going to drop by 14, 15 degrees and that we're going to be back in the depths of the Ice Age like this century.
There is definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a possibility that's going to happen next year. But I think it's a probability that it's going to happen within this century, is my understanding.
I will say that I think it's safe to say that within this millennium, it's definitely going to happen at least once or twice in the next like 900 years. I think so, yeah. Because this planet really tries its best to survive, and we're not helping it. We could be doing a better job at that, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I think once it happens we're there. We're back in the Ice Age. Like it's like we're like when the Gulf Stream is disrupted, global temperatures drop. It takes like thousands of years to get out of that Ice Age period.
Could definitely be.
Yeah.
Like with the Younger Dryas, the Earth got back quite quickly, I think. It's safe to say that. Like how long did that last? Like what, 1,000?
Go back to the chart run.
Yeah. I'm flunking on how long the Younger Dryas lasted.
1,200 years.
1,200 years. Yeah, like I said, like a little over 1,000 years. That's quite fast to get back up from it.
Yeah. Right.
We would be very lucky if we get out of it that fast again, because it can last like 2 million years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the last interglacial period was like 100,000 years ago or so, though, So I mean, the whole Younger Dryas up and down thing, those little fluctuations in the temperature, when we look at them from today, looking back 12,000 years, that's really just the Ice Age ending and us going into that interglacial period.
Yeah.
Like this is just little wobbles coming out of that. Yes. Yeah. So that's the chart on the top left. That looks like when I buy crypto at the top, that's what it does after I buy it. That's what my chart looks like.
Okay, my boyfriend will laugh at this because he's like getting into like trading and all that stuff and getting to learn the patterns. Yeah. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to tell him like Matt buys it when it's high.
The arrows are where I buy. They're pointing out where I buy on
exactly.
those arrows right there.
Love it.
But yeah, I mean, and then it just drops. So Yeah, it's concerning. I mean, it's like you talk about people in the UK that would need to move down. I mean, like the entire northern half of the northern hemisphere, the southern half of the southern hemisphere, everybody, there's going to be a mass migration when that happens more towards the equator. I mean, crops are going to be disrupted. There's going to be
So think about this.
we're off
Like
the
the
supply chain.
interglacial warming on the left, that picture. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Think about the fact that Neanderthals emerged around 400,000 years ago. And
When it
they
was hot.
thrived. They thrived up until like 150,000 years ago, 100,000, 50,000 years ago.
Yep.
And after that, they slowly started to disappear.
Yep.
They were created.
Hell yeah.
They were like absolutely, they were able to live in those cold
Yep.
climates.
Yep.
Like somehow they had a mutation that could handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't. Like I got ankylosing spondylitis. I get cold once. I get cold for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because the cold just creeps into my bones and I just can't get warm and I can't get the stiffness out.
Right. Right.
I would die. Like very seriously. But like those Neanderthals, they were adapted to that cold climate. And it seems like they thrived during the colder climates.
And it's just interesting, as you mentioned before, that like Neanderthal, that the remains of humans don't survive very well in climates where it's moist and near the equator, where it's hot, where it's humid, and like that's where everybody would have had to have been during the Ice Age. And so, you know, like how much has been lost just because that's where people would have been.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
You also asked about human evolution and how a branching off happens. It's not necessarily like a tree branch. It's more like rivers that fork out and sometimes go back into the mainstream. And sometimes that is because there was a mutation. Blue eyes are a mutation. Blonde hair is a mutation. White skin is a mutation. Sometimes a mutation gets hold. More people get it. That group spreads. So the mutation stays. Other times it just disappears and it gets extinct. But I think mutations are part of evolution. And we currently see some possible mutations happening as we speak right now.
my
You
hair,
have like this.
my hair is a mutation. Somebody in the airport told me that about 6 months ago. Like, you're a mutant. I'm like, oh no,
I
shit.
love that.
That's cool.
Love that.
I like it too.
So you have like these people, I think it's in Indonesia, they live in like these huts on the water. They rarely go on land. And they're really good at diving and they can stay underwater, I think, for up to like 3 minutes, maybe even longer. But Ryan can check that. Fact check me, Ryan. But yeah, so that is possibly becoming a mutation in their community. Yeah. So this could actually become, if evolution can continue, this might become a new human species eventually over time because their lung capacity, for 13 minutes, holy hell, I thought 3 minutes was long. Holy wow. So yeah, these people are incredible and they might become a new human species because of their lung capacity and their ability to stay underwater for so long. But then also on like Nepal and the Tibetan Plateau, like super high up in the mountains, people that live there, they can get way more oxygen out of the air than before, like me. If I would go there, I would feel like dying. And they're thriving. That also, if time goes on and evolution gets its way and we don't get killed off by like a cataclysmic event or a new ice age or whatever, that might become a new human species eventually. So we can actually see evolution happen around us. Like I said, monkeys enter the Stone Age, and these people might become mutated new species.
Yes. So maybe just so on the younger Dryas topic, then you're thinking that it was just purely Earth-based changes to.
There could always be like a meteor strike or whatever. Like
Comet.
that could the comets
Yeah.
plunging. Yeah, but I mean, we've seen so many meteors and comets already in the past decade or two plummeting into Earth, and it didn't really do much.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm like, it could have not helped. But I don't necessarily see that as the catalyst.
Yeah. Okay.
Or the catalyst, I think.
The reason I'm sure you're familiar with the Murray Springs and all of the like the black mat layer at Murray Springs that they found from that time period.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like this. Ryan, can you pull it up? It's like 12,000 years. Right at the onset of the Younger Dryas, there's this black matte layer that if you dig down, there it is. You can see like they've tested this stuff and measured it, and it's like it seems to be indicating cosmic impact
Okay.
and so it's.
I do know about like a black layer, like similar like that, from the Storegga slide in Scotland, when Doggerland disappeared for the last time.
Right. It's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
It's at the same level, but it's found all over the world. The same black matte layer is found all over the world, but it's at that same time period, and it's right when all of the megafauna went extinct all around the world, and so I understand the argument.
I also think that it might not have necessarily come from outer space. So like I said, the Lagersee volcano in Germany erupting, that would have left a black matte layer. So what if multiple volcanoes around the world went off around the same time, the conveyor belt of the Atlantic stopped or like got disrupted, you get a black matte layer over large chunks of the world, and then the Younger Dryas starts. It's very possible that it might not have been from outer space, but that it came from inside the Earth. I think that's a possibility as well.
Yeah. My understanding is they tested and measured the stuff, and that it was not volcanic. That it was actually like these little platinum iridium crystalline things that are extraterrestrial, that are not terrestrial, spherules.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what caused the extinction of everything and caused the climate change. I mean, if there's volcanoes happening, totally open to that being a big part of it as well. But my understanding is that this black matte layer that's found all over the world was determined to be of extraterrestrial nature through measurement, and that's why for me, I don't understand the academic resistance to the idea of that Graham Hancock and others have put out about this potentially being, and I almost feel like they're being stubborn. Well, because somebody else brought this up, because George Howard at Cosmic Summit is a part of this comet research group that's investigating this, like, because it didn't come from the academic community, because it came from the alt community, I almost feel like there's resistance from the academics to accept it.
Like I've not completely fully looked into like the Younger Dryas comet hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've decided to, like, I wanted to research it for a while, but I've not yet done it because I'm just waiting on like more information at this point. Because I want a little bit more before I really dive in and see what my opinion on it is. So I've not really looked into it at this point in time, because I feel, what if I get like subconsciously a little bit pushed into one of the two directions that are possible, and at this point I don't feel comfortable with me being pushed in either direction yet, because I've not seen conclusive evidence for it being the case, but I've also not seen conclusive evidence for it not being the case. So like, I want to be in the middle for now. I'm going to research it one day. Like my sister, she's more of like the KPG event, the Chicks Club crater and all that stuff. She's got the knowledge about that, and I can ask her more about that and share that knowledge with me. And I probably am going to make a video in the very near future about that black matte layer.
Good.
And ask her more about her information, and maybe ask her ex-boss, the Professor Per Alberg from the Uppsala University. I might have to ask him a little bit about this as well, because I think he will be knowledgeable, or at least be able to direct me to people that have researched this. Because I would like to know more about that, because that is definitely a mystery that needs to be solved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Talking to George Howard about it was super enlightening and super educational. He might be someone to talk to about it. He's good friends with Johanna, and he's on the group, on the Comet Research group. And so, but he has said that when he has presented the idea in the past in academic circles at conferences, he's bullied and harassed and made fun of, and it's like derogatory kind of stuff and so
that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. I think it's like, I think it's just again, just like that separation thing that, that people are just, if they didn't come up with it, then it's not really. And when I ask people about it, like it's like I've asked like David Miyamo about it, and it's like I haven't researched it. Like it's almost like they're staying away from the topic, and so it's kind of disappointing just from that someone who claims to be an expert on so many things is just avoiding a topic that seems to have clear directional evidence that points towards a rewriting of the traditional story, and I think that makes some academics uncomfortable.
It's possible. Yeah.
So anyways, that one's super interesting to me because it's so recent in Earth's history, and it's like to be able to push back our understanding of the human timeline and the geological timeline is like, I think to take it back to that younger Dryas period and to really understand what happened is important for us as a species to kind of come to grips with. And it's like the Carolina Bays are another thing that there's some debate as to when those were created. Was it at the younger Dryas or was it 700,000 years ago? So that's another topic where. Are you familiar with these things?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. It's all these elliptical shaped ground depressions that you can find all up and down the East Coast of the United States that they all point towards the Michigan Basin.
Okay.
And so it's like, it seems to be pretty clear evidence that that there was an impact, whether it was an airburst above the Michigan Basin or an impact into the ice sheet, when during the Ice Age that then splatted out ejected all of this material and created all of these Carolina Bays. But it's the current explanation is wind and water that created them, and it's just seems unlikely since they're all pointed towards the same direction. But that's another mystery that's kind of younger Dryas related that I was curious to get your thoughts on. But
I've never heard about that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Nobody has. Nobody has. It's like Chris Cottrell is the world's leading expert on this. I feel like right now he's done so much research on it. He presented at the Cosmic Summit, and I had him on the podcast, and it was an incredible episode and very highly underrated episode. It's one of my smaller ones, but still very, very educational and very good.
People go watch it.
Yeah, people go watch it. Yeah, for sure. You'll learn a lot. But well, cool. Yeah, those were a couple of the things that I was curious on getting your thoughts about. What else is on your mind?
I've just been wondering, like you growing up the way you did, and one day decided to do this podcast. Where did that come from?
Oh yeah.
Like, were you always interested in this?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, always interested in mysteries and trying to get some truth out of this world before I die. So I'm just interested in like what's reality, and so like what is the world that we're living in? Throw beliefs aside. Like let's take our beliefs aside and really kind of be open-minded to finding truth. And I was like you, reading the encyclopedia when I was a kid. It wasn't the encyclopedia, but I still have this book in my office about ancient mysteries and the pyramids and some big megalithic structures. And I got super interested in the UFO phenomenon when I was about 10 or 11 years old as well.
Yeah, that's the age when you get like into the UFOs. I got the same around that age. Yeah. So, everything was aliens.
Yeah.
Then I watched Signs and I didn't sleep for 3 weeks.
Okay.
I was 11.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Don't recommend.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff, just finding truth, like even on things like the Kurt Cobain, just things that I'm interested in personally, I'd like to kind of get to the bottom of. So Kurt Cobain, for example, I don't know if I can air this part or not, but I've interviewed several people that have been investigating the case for a long time, and of course it was ruled suicide. But I'm highly convinced that he was murdered. But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of me. I like to get to the bottom of things and to fix things and to solve things and to provide hopefully some answers and some truth for some people out there who are interested in similar things. So. And I want to, it's like the vases, like I'm not buying these vases to collect vases. I'm buying the vases to get to some sort of a truth about what tools our ancestors were using, how they did it, when they did it, what they were actually capable of. I think we know a lot of those answers. I think there's some missing tools. I think that it's going to be interesting to find out if some of the super precise ones are genuine and authentically ancient, or if they're modern reproductions, because I think it's much more likely, and I don't know if you'd agree after handling them, but much more likely that they're modern fakes than it is that they were made with primitive hand tools, because I think it's close to impossible that you could make some of these things with primitive hand tools.
I think you might be right there,
Yeah.
And it would be a shame if they were modern fakes and they were being sold as genuine from that time period.
Yep.
And it's difficult sometimes with certain paperworks, and sometimes discovery is made and it's not very well documented, especially if it's like happened 100 or 150 years ago. So I think that's going to be some of the difficulties in that as well.
Yeah. I think that the luminescent dating that you talked about could be very helpful in determining.
It could be helpful,
Yeah. So, but I mean, at the same time, we have the pyramids that were highly precise stone structures, that were within just a fraction of a degree of true north, south, east, and west, that were just highly sophisticated. That if they were making those, could they have made something super, super precise on a smaller scale, I mean, so.
It's not impossible, I think.
It's not impossible.
I do think about the fact that some people say that the pyramids had to have been built by aliens because they're so leveled and precise. And it's like, they were probably leveled by the use of water.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to think about the easiest explanation, especially when thinking about people living in ancient times. Like, what were the tools that they had? Well, water is a really good tool if you want to make something level.
Yeah.
Like one of the best.
Yeah.
So I think there are some explanations that we have for things from in ancient times. And some of them are like super simple and then people are like, what? And it's like, yeah, it's so basic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, true.
But with the vases, I think it would be a shame if some of them are indeed modern fakes.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's also kind of expected, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to find out. Whatever the truth is, I'm going to share it, whatever
I think that's a good thing. Yeah, just for the truth out there.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's kind of what the show is all about, hearing people's truths. And, I wanted to get someone with a unique perspective. Obviously, I've had a lot of alt history perspectives, which has been fascinating and fun to explore. I think you bring a perspective that's very unique and very individual based on what you've learned and what you've researched and studied over the years. And so, I think it's I think that the way that you explained it was that you err towards the side of the scientific approach and the scientific method. And so I definitely wanted to hear your thoughts on some of the stuff, some of the mysteries and some of the stuff that you're researching, and super cool about the ancient humans and all of that. I didn't know a lot of that information, so I learned a lot.
I'm just glad that I didn't scare you off on like X or like Twitter. I still call it Twitter, because like I can be brutal on there.
Be very direct.
And I just saw you, like sometimes I would have like tweeted and then like 10 minutes later I would get like a DM from you and I'm like, he saw that. Shit, he saw that. I called a dude a waffle and he saw it and he's still DMing me. He still wants me to come on the podcast.
Even more after that. Yeah.
I love
perfect.
that.
Yeah.
That makes me like you even more, because like at least I can be weird.
Be your authentic self.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Yeah.
I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I said chesticles on the podcast.
You did.
I'm very proud of that. So now your audience will know about the chesticles.
Right. Yeah. No, awesome.
Yeah.
No, good stuff. Good times. It's great to get to know you. Would love to have you back at some point in time.
I would love to be back.
Yeah,
really.
cool,
Like
cool.
I've never done a podcast like this where I was actually present in the same space.
Yep.
I really enjoyed this.
Cool.
And I think we had a good conversation going.
Me too. Yeah. I think you'll do a lot more after this. It's
who knows?
Yeah, for sure. So awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up then.
Yeah.
But yeah, really appreciate you, your knowledge, your
too.
time. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
And thank you for having me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good times.
Yeah.
Thank you.